Is that what she was talking about?
Yeah, that is exactly what she was talking about.
Hi.
So.
Well, now
okay.
you've just made the whole thing weird. We're going to be talking about comic books today. Anyway.
Oh, good.
Comics.
Hi.
Hi.
I just sat down after a long walk. How exciting. To choose a random couch where they're going to be talking about comic books. Any particular comic books?
No,
We don't know. We'll figure it out as we go along.
We have a very special guest who picked a topic we had been saving for a long time for the exact right moment, which is now. Which is with you. Welcome to the show, Anthony.
Thank you.
Anthony Carboni.
Actually, please tell our audience where they can find you and how they would know you and where you come from.
Yeah, sure. So right now, you can see me every Wednesday on the official Star Wars YouTube channel.
What?
I'm host of the Star Wars Show.
What?
Which is a weekly show that's all about Star Wars that we shoot from Lucasfilm HQ.
So it's about Star Wars?
It's about Star Wars.
But like, what do you talk
It's
about?
about Sam Witwer mostly.
It's basically about staring into Sam Witwer's eyes for hours and hours.
And that man's got some
Mashes that
muscle.
sub button.
That's right. His eyes and his jaw. That's basically all we talk
He does have a
about.
strong
It's a wicked
jaw.
jaw.
Yeah, so we do that
Got a
every
strong
Wednesday.
jaw, though.
Thank you very much. I mean, I'm no Witwer.
Is that the phrase around the studio? I mean, I'm no Whitwer, but I do work out.
That is
I feel
exactly
like
what we
I've heard
say.
it here too.
Yeah, so I do that every Wednesday. I also have a science comedy podcast 3 times a week with Jeff Kanata that's called We Have Concerns. And yeah, and then I just YouTube around and do all that kind of stuff. You know,
Exciting.
just YouTube around.
YouTube around.
Just you.
Yeah.
Just YouTube.
Surf the
YouTube.
tubes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It sounds almost like just slumming it. Just YouTube slumming
It actually sounds like a method of transportation. Like,
Yeah.
I just YouTubed my way over there.
Elon
and
Musk
then
is
I...
building one of those. It's the YouTube, and it's going to take you from one end of California to the other.
But only you.
But only you.
But
It's
only
your
you.
personal tube.
It's the
Elon Musk
YouTube.
has made a
It's the tube
personal
that brings
tube
you
for the
to you.
rich.
Oh, it only ever brings you to you?
Your trigger is one of my triggers.
So speaking of the tube of you, we're going to be talking about a game of you.
Whoa!
Oh, wow. What a segue.
Expert levels.
That was
today.
That was.
I slept like
Expert.
5 hours last night. I feel so refreshed. I went to bed at like 3 a.m. It was amazing.
You
man,
specifically
early night,
explained
huh?
this segue in terms of sleep,
Yeah.
which I find
He's
especially.
a segue machine tonight.
Yeah.
Just a retort into the
Taliesin
segue.
Segway Jaffe. That's what we call him.
Because
They
when
do.
we were talking about maybe seeing if you could come by the show because you love comics, we asked what you'd want to talk about, and spoilers from anyone who can see the table right now. What are we talking about?
Sandman. Sleep. I get it. Well done, Chief.
I'm so excited. Well, I got a
happy.
short list from y'all of things that you've been meaning to talk about, and I know originally like top of the list was Star Wars, which was pretty obvious, but like third down was Sandman, and I was like, Star Wars. I do that every week. I'm no Sam Witwer. I just want to talk about Sandman.
The top and the bottom of the list, that's the bread. You always want to go over the meat.
Exactly.
You want to find the patty in there.
Yeah.
I also should point out we have this. I'm gonna see if I can do it. We have this tiny box. This tiny box in the corner. I'm really bad at this.
There we go.
You're doing it.
Yeah.
We believe
You're
in you.
close. Yeah. There you go.
There we are.
Just
There
Nick
we are.
Arcade that. You're doing it.
Our today's episode, we have a sponsor. It's amazing.
Thank you so much to Comicsology,
Thank
who's
you,
going to
Comicsology.
sponsor us this month.
It's been amazing. And we're brought to you by Comicsology Originals, which is that Comicsology has their own line of comics that they're releasing right now that you can read if you have a Comicsology Unlimited subscription.
Or an Amazon Prime, or a Kindle Unlimited, or you can buy them for regular money. You have so many ways. But if you have any of those other things, you don't even need regular
And-
money. You can just read them for free.
And honestly, you should have Comicsology Unlimited.
It's really good.
It's real good.
It's a fantastic service, and it's like, oh, comics are so expensive, and I can't afford to read them. Yes, you can, because Comicsology Unlimited.
It definitely significantly lowered my use. I used to have a very intense monthly budget, and it's
Yeah.
gone down. It's gone down significantly.
In the long run, it just leads to more comics.
I know.
That's how we get you. But what do we get you with specifically today?
Today's episode is brought to us by Super Freaks.
Ooh, Super Freaks.
Super Freaks is a superhero story about all of the, just to sort of sum up, all the adult superheroes vanishing, and the teen sidekicks have to kind of figure out what's happening, but no one's really happy about a bunch of teen sidekicks running around trying to solve mysteries, and it's
And save the world.
And
Like
save
they don't
the
have
world.
they don't have their trust in them yet.
no, they're teens, man. They're not.
Like I'll trust Batman, but I will not trust Robin.
And I'm trying.
Well, you shouldn't trust Robin.
and
nor
it's-
should-
Which
yeah.
Robin?
The current Robin should never
Oh.
be trusted.
Oh yeah, I know. You absolutely shouldn't trust that
Boy,
Robin.
man, you shush. No.
He can be your boy all you want. You
Yeah.
just can't trust him.
Taliesin wouldn't want to work with anyone he could trust.
I trust him with my life. I just don't trust him in a game of cards.
Yeah, fair enough.
This is written. We're going to ruin these names, and I'm
There's
so
a
apologetic.
wonderful team behind this. Elsa Chartier,
Wow, well done. Perry Colnett, and oh my God, Margot Sautel. Oh God, I'm the worst.
that third name now, Sautel, Margot Sautel
Bless
is
you.
doing the art. It looks really, really fun. You can read all 5 issues of it right now for your binging pleasure on Comixology Originals. And if you have any of those services, it's free.
I'm going to start this weekend. I'm very excited, and not just because it's some of the Wasp kids, and I love the new Wasp book so much.
Which
So
we
yeah-
just heard is coming back.
I know it's in the art is so good.
Yeah. Okay.
So wow.
So much.
So thank you for sponsoring us,
Thank you
Comixology.
so
Go
much
read
for the
Super
fun-
Freaks.
And I believe I just dropped a ton of money on Comixology Sandman books this week as well because I was like, I don't own any of these digitally. I need to do this. I suppose I should start here.
Ooh.
You're just
Oh.
toys now.
Oh, Comixology Originals. Oh.
Okay, now I'm a little. That they can get like a cool like moving graphic, and like we have trouble pulling up images now. I just don't.
It's a great month for motion graphics and comic books with like the Netflix Mark Miller like gets a trailer now. Like comic books get trailers.
Wait, I haven't seen that.
Yeah, the
No.
new Magic Order book came out today.
I used to make comic book trailer. That'll be a discussion for another day. So I'm supposed to start off the conversation. I wanted to show off this.
Oh, I'm going to do one more segue.
You do your segue.
Comixology is one of the reasons that I love it is that it is making, it is letting an audience that didn't feel like they knew a way how to get into comics get access to that. And one of the all-time works to accomplish the same thing was Neil Gaiman and Company's Sandman. Okay, now,
That is such a good segue because it's true. Because there was almost a bad joke. I remember reading Neil felt it was a bad joke that occasionally he would be at parties and people would ask like, "What do you do?" He's like, "I'm a comic book writer," and they'd be, "Oh, what have you written?" And he'd be like, "I write Sandman." And they're like, "That's not a comic book. That's a graphic novel."
and they think they're
And
complimenting
he's like,
you.
"Yeah, how do you?" He's like, "It's just like being informed." No, really, I'm a lady of the evening. He's like, "Thank you." This was one of those things. This was a comic book that was considered by people who feel that it's worth considering these sorts of things to be better than being really a comic book back in the day.
But it's a comic book.
It's a comic.
Yeah.
It's
And there's no
Also
shame in
that
that.
good.
It's a really good comic. So this is something I brought from home, which is
It's very
I was
pretty.
drooling over it
is.
outside. I do not own. This
I
is
don't
what is
have
called
that
an
one.
absolute edition, which
so
means big
I'm gonna
and fancy.
peel. I'm
and
going
in
to
a
peel the
slipcover.
layers. I'm going to peel the layers for you guys. It's this beautiful, and we're going to have to talk about Dave McKean at some point too, because that's a big part of that. So
Because this story is very much about Neil Gaiman, but it's also very much about the incredible network of collaborators who brought this book to life. So Dave McKean is the cover artist that we'll be getting into as we go for much of the run.
So this is volume 1 of these books of this beautiful, ridiculous leather hardbound,
Oh,
beautifully
Jesus.
illustrated
And-
collection.
Yeah, and if you're just like, if you watch this episode tonight and you go, oh, I think I'm gonna get into Sandman, just jump straight to this. Because I didn't, and I have, because I was collecting the paperbacks, trades as they came, as I got into Sandman, and like, by the time I got to the end, I was so in love with it, and now they're all on my shelf anyway, and it's one of those situations where it's like, how do I justify that when I already have all
You
of
already
these?
have all of those.
Those
Yep.
are your
Those are your
lending
loaning
copies.
copies.
Thank you. those travel outside the house while these stay in
That
the bunker.
stays in.
Books don't travel outside the house unless they're handcuffed or shackled to me in some way. No.
So
The
if they,
case that you
they
travel with.
I'm sorry. I wish
go
I
where
was a
they
more
go?
generous person than I am, but
I
I'm
can think
not.
of plenty of reasons to have something like that handcuffed to you. Oh, it's the sound of her wings. There's so much.
So these books were
that's
originally
on
published late 80s to mid 90s, early mid 90s is when the run officially stopped. They technically exist under DC Comics. They preceded but helped to define the Vertigo imprint because it was about, I think, a solid 5 years between the book starting and the name Vertigo.
Really?
Because Vertigo just turned 25, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to say it was less than that.
Okay.
But you're probably not super far off. But I do remember the first year, especially, was like really tied into the DCU.
They tried so hard. Like,
Yeah.
oh, there's Martian Manhunter and
Yeah.
Superman and
And it was interesting.
It was.
cool.
Constantine,
and
yeah.
then I want to say
John
like
had
it was around for maybe like a year and a half, 2 years, and then Vertigo, the imprint, came out, and like one of the things that I love about this that I'm sure we'll talk about is that Neil just never gave up being part of the DCU. Like he doubled down on it almost when they put him on Vertigo. He was like, no, superheroes still. Like,
Every
this
once
is
in a
still
while.
I still
when
love
see him,
them.
it is
No.
okay.
it's not time yet, but one of my favorite Sandman. I have actually loaded my favorite Sandman DC Universe crossovers into the image gallery. That'll hopefully come.
It was fun for me because growing up as sort of Marvel first, general pop culture DC familiarity, and then discovering Vertigo, when I first read Sandman, there were a lot of characters I thought he was making up that it turns out were big parts of the DC universe. Like there were some that I would catch.
Like, do you remember any?
Well, for
Cain and
instance,
Abel.
Cain and Abel.
Yep.
Cain and Abel, like
I-
finding out that Cain and Abel are actually canonical DC Universe characters. They live in the House of
I don't know-
Secrets and the
Yep.
House of Mysteries.
Oh my God, you're right.
Did
They're
I
the
just
actual hosts.
blow your fucking mind? They're the hosts
Yes.
of House
Oh.
of
Yeah,
Secrets.
they're like the
and
Crypt
House of Mysteries.
Keepers.
I should just not even be on this
Yeah.
show.
No,
anymore. Good night.
That was me.
Good night, everybody.
No, this is why you're here.
That's
This episode
Sandman.
is specifically originally made it onto the schedule as the "We are so excited for Matt to read Sandman. I cannot wait for Matt to read Sandman." Like that's the sub-purpose of this because there's no wrong time to discover this, and we had a strong feeling specifically that you would have a lot of reactions to this material.
Well, and, like-
it's a very exciting day.
And like we were resisting like reading Sandman only because I hadn't read it yet, and I was like, no, you know what? This is an excuse for me to read it because we have to do prep for the show. This is a show I'm on. It's a responsibility.
And you were
like
like,
for
"Oh
a-
dang, 5 volumes."
I feel like for a generation of comic book readers, finding Sandman was like the equivalent of somebody's older brother handing you like your first Bowie or Beatles album.
Oh, the Bowie.
You're like,
That
like,
is so.
like it is
You're
such a
so right.
formidable, like it was such a formative, but formidable as well, but formative moment. Like if I had to boil down like 3 moments that just like opened me up to like the wider world of comics, this was like number 1.
How did you find it? I'm curious.
Yeah, no, start there.
I think it was, I was going to a comic book store called Whiz Bang, which I don't think is still around in Central Florida. Shout out to Whiz
Aw.
Bang if you are still around. God bless you.
The original title of the book Captain Marvel appeared in?
Yeah.
Yeah, Whizbang Comics. You're right.
Whiz Bang
Yeah,
Comics,
cute.
yeah. So I would go to.
I was like, I know that name. Have I been to that shop? I've only been to Florida once. And
yeah, it was, in the beginning I just thought it was like cute onomatopoeia, and then as I got more and more into comics, I was like, this means something. It all means something. I want to say that what got me into it, because I was a few years late getting into it, I think it was the death, the High Cost of Living had come out, or Time of Your Life had come out.
I brought one of them, but they're both.
I have both of them there in leather if you want to take a look.
And somebody was like,
'Cause I-
you've got to check these out. Like, have you read any Sandman yet? And I was like, no, Sandman? Like, I don't understand. Like, I wanted to be a comic book artist at the time, and I was
know
entirely tights and capes. Yeah, all the way through college, I was a traditional art student.
wow.
Yeah, so this was like, oh my gosh.
I know, it's so hot.
These were 2
Now this I
miniseries
can buy. I don't
published
have this.
One of the most important characters that you meet in the pages of Sandman is Death.
We're
She's
gonna
literally
have
Death.
to do
We'll
a
go into it.
breakdown.
One of the
But
best
she-
intros of any character.
God, oh, there it is. Oh man, wait. This we're gonna have to talk about at some point. I don't know if you know about this.
This is if you were to like pinpoint
That book.
the exact moment where I figured out what my type was.
You and every goth boy in America.
Oh
all
my
at the same
God.
time.
And several women.
Like, yeah, if you
fair.
like if you were to see a picture of my wife in like college or now, like just put glasses on her. Like this is where it came from. But yeah, I think somebody was like, you have to read Death. Have you read Sandman? I'm like, no, what is Sandman? I was entirely tights and capes. I was like entirely just like mainstream stuff. I think I was reading like just a lot of Marvel, DC, and Image. And I had not yet veered off too much. And somebody was like, oh, no, you'll like it. It's like, it was, this is the cool thing about Vertigo, or was the cool thing about Vertigo at the time. No, you'll like it. It's DC. And I was like,
Yeah.
sweet, yeah, I love it.
Yeah.
great. I just read 0 Hour, and I think it's phenomenal because I don't know any better. Let's do this. And so
It eases you into it, though, doesn't it?
does.
Like those first 12 issues, they keep reminding you, it's okay, Martian Manhunter's here, everything's fine.
it's like a weird. In the beginning, it's very similar to stuff that Alan Moore and Grant Morrison were doing at the same time, especially with like the Animal Man run and like Doom Patrol and things like that, where it's like, here's like a weird kind of secret side door into this comic book universe.
It turns out the door also leads everywhere.
Yeah.
But but you start with that sort of, once it's that left field view. All of the books that you just mentioned, we should note, I believe, I check my facts if I'm wrong on this, but they were all Karen Berger books.
They were all Karen Berger.
The editor who would go on to officially found Vertigo, but had found all of this wonderful British talent and was having them just storm the gates of comics and change it forever.
And just like play with mythology and play with like the idea of storytelling, and like all of these guys were like obsessed with the idea of storytelling as a part of the story that they were telling. And the idea of like, as I'm like in these worlds talking about these superheroes that are kind of like mythological characters, I'm just gonna like play with the fact that this is mythology and like really mess with it. And it's just, it's so good. So good. And it really just kind of blew my mind open at that point in time. Oh, this
I mean,
Yeah.
come on.
Yeah.
And this
So heartbreaking.
we're just gonna flip through it and look.
I've debated bringing these, and I'm so glad I did. So
have you read this one? Is this in the Absolute or in
Yeah, no,
Depth?
I've read this one.
How did you come across it?
I came across it because I was a goth kid. I got into comic books super late, and I was a goth kid, and this is what the goth kids were reading. And immediately after reading it, also like it was formative for like every human being I ever. I have lifelong friends that I've made who were literally people I saw out in public wearing Sandman T-shirts.
Oh yeah,
And
everybody had
immediately-
the one death T-shirt.
Oh,
the one with just her eye. Oh,
I had the checkerboard. I had the checkerboard death. I actually stole that from an ex-girlfriend, and to this day I get text messages demanding it back. 25 years later. In fact, I've probably just activated
their
it.
statute of limitations is up. You got squatters' rights on that
She
T-shirt.
knows
I was about to say squatters' rights.
I'm kind of messed.
So before we go further into Sandman, what is Sandman?
So,
Like our audience is like, great, they're all into this. What is it?
should I take the
Please.
first run?
Please.
In the overarching DC universe, which has superheroes, gods, monsters, and all levels of creation, there exists a series of anthropomorphic personifications of basic primal elements that stand above all. These are the first beings that were ever willed into existence. They are older than the universe, and there will still be one of them left when the universe ends. They are Dream.
Ooh, okay.
Oh, you wanna do them in order?
Important question.
There's one maybe we don't want to name, right?
1.5?
Yeah.
Are we not going to name? I'm going to give what
No, just one. You're right.
I'm going to give what they know right now. I'm
Great.
not gonna-
Okay.
Great.
There's Dream. There's Death. There's Desire. There's Despair. There's Destiny. There's Delirium. And are we talking about? Let's not talk about the brother, and let's not talk about Delirium's shady past. But there's a few of them.
They are the endless.
They are the endless. They are a family. They are dysfunctional. Dream, especially, possibly the most dysfunctional of them all. And Dream, in a fit of hubris, got trapped on Earth for quite a while. Sometime in the 1940s, 30s.
Teens?
Yeah.
Possibly
I think it was
way back.
pre-World War I.
It was and that's
World
like
War
the
I.
very first couple books.
That's the
is-
first book.
Yeah.
Is him
Escaping
like trying to escape this
this prison.
prison.
So it begins his life as essentially a horror comic, partly because that was a mode a lot of them were working in at the time, and partly because it just, like, over time, different stories will tap into fantasy and horror and other modes of storytelling, but it begins with sort of, like, a guy who has made a bad idea deal with a force he doesn't understand, and it's sort of, you understand over time that the force he doesn't understand is your protagonist.
Wow! What a great way
Actually,
to put
a
it.
really
Yeah.
great way to put it.
And it becomes, anything that you can then think of the concept of dream as it touches and the world and is touched by it, you will come to see reflected in some element. The stories, many of them can be read on their own. I love it as a reading experience from the beginning onwards because it unfolds and grows and the pieces of the mythology accrue. But a lot of it can be read in sort of any order because it's just some other facet of the world and what happens to Dream and how he interacts with it.
And, yeah. Go on.
No, I was going to say, as a matter of fact, I always recommend to people to start with, to skip Preludes and Nocturnes and start with The Doll's House. Preludes and Nocturnes is like the Dream origin story that Amy was just talking about. And it's not very emblematic of what the series becomes. And I remember even the first time I was reading it, the guy at Whiz Bang was like, just keep reading until you get to the other Sandman, which is like midway through volume 2.
Wesley Dodds.
Yeah. So it's like, just keep reading until you get to the other Sandman, and if you still don't like it, you can stop, but get there. Because the first volume is very like all over the place, kind of weird. And Sam Keith is the artist, and I love Sam Keith, but I feel like he was a real mismatch for the series.
Which is apparently what he said when he decided not to pursue. I didn't know
Really?
this. I just read this in your introduction to Absolute, that he said like he wasn't sure that he quite fit. He felt like Jimi Hendrix in the Beatles, which is, I think was intended to be fully complimentary, to just be like, I think there's something vibing. And
I'm talented, and these guys are talented, and they're great on their own, but they just don't
You can
match.
tell editorial was trying to turn this into Swamp Thing, and it wasn't Swamp Thing.
It wasn't Swamp Thing.
But I mean, like, and I can see exactly what he's talking about in these. I mean, like, he's such a talented artist, but he is definitely.
Yeah, you can see the talent there, but
it's
the
not where the
later
story's
books
going.
are.
Oh God, it's so dark. Oh, it's so dark.
But yeah, so the second one is kind of the first real sort of standalone, like Morpheus as we will kind of come to know him. And
Morpheus is Sandman in Dream.
Yeah, he's got a million names. It's very Russian lit. Because everybody, like every society has a different name for
Dream.
and what dreaming is.
And he is a principality that covers all of humanity.
Yeah.
So.
And as a character, it's also interesting. He's one of those black hole characters, which are often huge. I find often are not my favorite kind of story, but this is one of those rare places where it works great.
Works really well.
He is unknowable, and this is not a main character you ever really get to know. You don't really. The whole story is about the people around him on a certain level.
So one of my favorite
how
things.
they deal with his disconnect.
Well, one of my favorite things about reading the series as a whole is that just when you've accepted that it's not actually about him, it kind of becomes about him, and you realize that's what you were reading all along.
Yeah.
But it does both in this wonderful way where and I almost feel like that's a spoiler because you will be fine with it. You will be like, I will read 10,000 individual stories about people that aren't him and how his life their lives are touched by him, because the way that the Endless reflect on humanity is what makes them so fascinating, and some of them are more and less aware of that.
It reminds me in a lot of ways like to something like a genre television show, like a medical show or a crime show, right? Where it's like, yes, here are the characters and they are the main characters, but every week it's really about a different patient or a different case that they're working, and there are all these different new supporting characters, and you very obliquely find out about your main characters when they like share a page together. And then that's it for an entire issue for like a very long time.
And it's slowly filling in negative space until the image becomes clear because you've removed everything that is.
It kind of gave me
like
the.
one of those mosaics made out of tiny photographs. You just look at the photographs for a while, and then you're like, oh, okay, you were talking.
No, it's okay. It was kind of like I got the impression because I only got the chance to read almost all the way through the 5th volume, but.
That just means we get to do this again.
I know, right? So excited. We'll probably do like 4 or 5 of these. And you can come back.
Great.
But I got the
Official
feeling.
Sandman correspondent.
Sam Witwer.
Now I'm no Sam Witwer.
But I got the impression that it would be sort of like reading like the Vault of Horror. If the Crypt Keeper was like more than just a storyteller. Like the Crypt Keeper was involved in the stories that he was telling, and was slowly becoming the main character of those horror stories.
You're not far off.
Yeah. So.
And that's very much similar to what you get out of the death stories, because she has a very defined perspective on the fact that she's like, I am literally just here to do my job. but there's a million different ways that I can. We'll get to that.
Her way of being unknowable is very extroverted, though, whereas his is very he's completely internal and she's totally expressive.
She's a people person.
But in that expressiveness, she's also a black hole in a vacuum, which is really it's so much.
It's like how do you write that? Like how do you?
No one knows. If we knew, we'd keep writing it all the time.
So this was
talented.
apparently Neil Gaiman's first regular monthly book. He'd already been doing Black Orchid, but that's, I guess, considered different because it's a few standalone ones.
This is this is not counting whatever books he burned on a pyre to a dark god to make.
But like what though? How? How did the Neil become?
And how did he sell this? Because I seem to remember a story of him like having a hard time selling it, or like Karen Berger wasn't on board initially, or something like.
The word is, there's two stories.
I just.
We just read this.
Yeah, I don't own the Absolute, so I was reading the introduction in the front, which is by Paul Levitz, who was the head of DC for much of this time, or around DC for all of this. And, if I'm remembering correctly, is the guy who hired Karen Berger. So thank you. Or was it Len Wein who hired Karen? Either way, they were both very important parts of DC's structure. So he talks about this sort of parallel evolution that like a couple things had to happen. There are a few different sources for this series because there was an editorial retreat where DC was sort of like, we've just had a really great couple of years. We did Watchmen, we did Dark Knight. Like, what's next? What are we doing? Let's keep this rush going. Like, we need more pitches. We need more ideas. And then one standard thing you can do in comics is to go back to an older character and do like a fresh take on them.
It was the best advice I ever gave when I was trying to write characters for they're like, find somebody nobody cares about and make people care.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's many of the best comics.
See Kite Man this year. Kite Man.
You say that, but they've brought him up a lot lately, haven't they?
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. Kite Man. It worked.
I don't know what you're talking
Oh,
about.
Kite Man got mentioned in the Batman wedding issue.
Gotcha.
The Joker was like, it's like good and evil, night and day.
Yeah, I guess technically-
Batman, Kite Man. You just have other end.
I guess it was technically last year when Kite Man had his big.
He's coming back in a big way.
I may have skipped that bit. Is it the Tom King Batman?
It was War of Jokes and Riddles. Yeah, there's a lot of Kite
the
Man.
flashback stuff. I need to catch up on it so I can see what they
Blowing into
like,
Gotham
poor Ivy.
this year.
There's a lot of good Kite Man content.
Excellent.
Super got to catch up.
But yeah, but like they had been doing the same thing when Grant Morrison took over Animal Man. It was because literally nobody wanted to write Animal Man.
Yeah.
And he was like, cool, I got an idea.
I'll do it.
And Doom Patrol was the same way. Like, nobody cared about My Greatest Adventure. They were just like, great, I'll take these guys.
And so this
Same thing happened with the X-Men when they brought them back in the 70s.
Yeah.
So-
do whatever.
so-
There was this editorial meeting where they came out of it with a couple pitches, and one of them was they like this editor would try this editor would try this, and the way Paul Levitz remembers it, without anybody remembering any previous conversation, they were like, what about we have that Golden Age hero Sandman, Karen Berger, do something with that. And apparently, months before that, she had had dinner with Neil Gaiman, and he had pitched like a bunch of things he'd be interested in doing, and specifically referenced the Simon and Kirby Sandman as one of those.
Wow. So the Simon and Kirby Sandman, just for a brief aside, we probably have an image in there called Wesley Dodds. Is a great character, a character I'm a very big fan of, which was literally just a detective. Wesley Dodds was a detective.
I love his look. Like his look is one of my
It
favorites.
would wear a gas mask and had a sleeping gas gun, and he was just in a suit with a gas mask that he had from the war and a gas gun, and would put people to sleep, and but was just a detective. There he is, looking all dapper. And
There's nothing creepier
his
than
wife
a
was a
gas
mystery
mask. I don't
writer,
know why.
and he would help he would have these adventures as a detective, and his wife would write mystery novels about it. The Dodds, and they were just this adorable married crime-fighting couple. They were like the Thin Man without jokes. Then they're going to come back in a later episode of Wednesday Club, because eventually I'm going to make everyone read Starman, and Wesley Dodds is a big part of that. Because Starman's so good.
It's so good.
He was telling us about it
Starman
on
is
Monday.
very good.
He was like, we've got to do a Starman episode.
Dude, and once you read Sandman and you get all tied up in the Vertigo stuff, there's no escaping Starman. Every path leads to Starman, and it's totally fine.
All roads lead
Totally
to
good.
Still kill for that leather jacket.
Yeah, it's so good.
So, but the other look for Golden
There's
Age
another Sandman as well. There's Wesley Dodds.
So Wesley Dodds, and there's another one.
Yeah.
Which was a spandexy Sandman. That was a little more. I'm trying to remember his real name.
This one, am not familiar.
They mention him in the doll's house.
Yeah.
It's part of the flashback in the doll's house. But like that's what I think is really funny is like, what was this initial pitch for Sandman when there were already these 2 Sandman characters? And how did Neil Gaiman sneak this in? Because he totally snuck in a 3rd Sandman and made it all about this 3rd Sandman.
Be like, I'm going to take the name Sandman and then just be like, what if concepts were people and the people had infinite adventures?
There are 3 panels in the first issue that deal with Wesley Dodds. Wesley Dodds, so one of the things that happens in the first issue, and there will be some spoilers, I do apologize, is that while Dream is captured by this, definitely not the OTO cult of the 1913s,
Sorry.
Yeah.
What?
The cult
She
that
just
captures
Zach
him
Morris timed out,
is very much based on a real cult at the time. Like you're very
it was
much
called.
That's amazing.
that's the OTO. Yeah, you guys can Google.
Google carefully.
It's Crowley.
apparently.
It's obviously Crowley. Like they're making no bones. Like
Oh, yeah.
the character meets
An
Aleister
Aleister
Crowley.
type.
Yeah.
Yeah, the character meets Aleister Crowley, but at the same time, he's obviously trying to be. He's like a sub Crowley.
Sub Crowley.
Crowley light, just 1 calorie, just one endless in the basement. Everyone is the whole world is having this effect of Dream being captured. The essence of Dream is literally chained in someone's basement. So there was
For generations.
for a while. Well, and there was a sleep pandemic, and this was a real thing, by the way. That there was actually
sleeping sickness.
The sleeping sickness was a real thing that happened in the world. They don't know why. Still, just people, stopped being able to sleep.
Well, we know why, because we've read this book.
Well, we know why, because we read the book.
Based on true events.
But one of the things is all these people having these weird effects from Dream being captured, and one of them is Wesley Dodds starts having nightmares about this creature, and for reasons that become clear later, starts kind of dressing up. The Dream also has a helmet that he wears that looks like a gas mask.
Oh
Yeah.
my God.
And Wesley starts
I'm
putting on the
remembering this
gas
issue
mask
now.
and putting people to sleep, and it's so that he can sleep. It like they call it the sleep of the just. It's this whole he's an after effect of the universe trying to create a Sandman.
It's because
so
those
good.
those first couple issues, while they were trying to figure out everything stylistically, that stuff just kind of like the first few issues feel very jumbled.
For me, the
Yeah.
Preludes.
because of the layouts and the art
Luster.
style.
And this is what
Yeah.
the
But there are a lot of those characters that like pop up
Whoa.
in the first couple issues that pop up again that are only mentioned for a few panels.
every time you go back to Sandman, you will be like, that was there the whole time?
Oh,
Yeah.
God, I love that sort of
The universe
storytelling
knows
so much.
someone is missing, and slowly it attempts to replace him. Wesley Dodds' nightmares have stopped since he started going out at night. He puts evil people to sleep with gas, then sprinkles sand on them and leaves them for the police to find in the morning. The idea came to him in his sleep. He doesn't dream about the man in the strange helmet anymore. No more burning eyes. Everything's all right. Wesley Dodds sleeps the sleep of the just.
See, I love like the Gaiman, Morrison, Alan Moore obsession with taking like the completely silly,
The nonsensical.
and just being like, no. How do I make this cool?
How do I make this
How do I make
fucking
this
cool?
smart? How do I make this haunt you? How do I make the idea of a guy in the 40s who goes out literally with a gun full of sleeping gas and that's his shtick?
Yeah.
How do I make this cool for
Mr.
you?
It's that golden age like schlock where it's like that, like they were still figuring out the whole medium, they were still figuring like all of that stuff. So they're like, yeah, he's a guy in a trench coat, he's a detective, sure, and a sleeping mask and a gun. Yeah,
He can't have a real gun because of the comics code.
Yeah.
So what do we give him?
sleeping gay.
Sleeping
yeah,
gay.
sleeping
But you
gas.
also get
Kids
like
will
the
love it.
original stories are Simon and Kirby. It's the same guys who came up with Captain America.
Yeah.
They were just
Yeah.
throwing stuff at the wall. And so the sort of weird reverse acknowledgement that like that there's inherently so much pulpy creative power in even the like left field stuff these guys were throwing at the wall. Like there's that to me it's sort of this weird circular invocation that they're like, I shall go to the well of creativity, and even though I'm not doing that at all, I'm
the
in
ladle
that
pops
lineage.
in, and yep.
Like
Well, there's an instinct, I think, to take like those golden age things. Like they even did that with like even just the Superman movie. Is like it's like the original script was by Mario Puzo, and it was all camp. It was like Teddy Savalas, Who Loves You, Baby. Like he was referenced in it. Like it was just like, what is going on in this movie? And then Donner comes in and goes, no, I'm going to take this seriously. We're going to treat this seriously. Yeah, it's golden age pulp. It's hokey and it's fun, but what if we treated it seriously and acted like it was an actual real movie?
Yeah.
I will say one of the many interesting side effects of the Sandman book, by the way, is that Wesley Dodds got his own book again.
Yeah.
Which was called Sandman Mystery Theater. I think we have a
I
cover.
need to read
Yeah.
that one.
Where they
haven't read that
actually
one
did
yet.
pulpy noir. If you want some good detective pulpy noir stories, and I think there should be a Sandman Mystery Theater cover in the gallery.
It was
there we
pretty
are.
good.
Look at those, and like they did the photographic covers.
Yeah,
and
I
it's,
love that stuff.
that's
Can we bring back
just-
photo and collage covers, please?
I'm ready.
Can we just bring them
They
back?
did when
Oh!
they're done right.
Weirdly, sorry, the wild non sequitur. Except I just
Yes.
saw a beautiful mosaic cover today. There was in the Dave McKean photographing real art school of doing covers. There's a variant coming out. I might be a store exclusive for I Hate Fairyland, Scotty Young's image book. It's done by Jason Aaron's wife. He is one of my favorite comic book writers, but what I didn't realize is that his wife is a super rad mosaic artist, and this piece
Wow.
is so beautiful, and it's this little crazy, like, candy-colored, like, nightmare escape, because it's I Hate Fairyland, so
Yeah.
it should be. And so anyway, people still working in that style, that would be great.
Hey,
Get her
I
to
love
do
it.
some
They-
alts for
they
the
re-
new Sandman books that are doing.
They recently did a new one for Doom Patrol, too. Like, they went back and did a classic-style Doom Patrol cover. Because Doom Patrol had the same thing going on as Sandman, where it was all Dave McKean, like, making little diorama box covers for it. And so they did one for the new Doom Patrol, which the new Doom Patrol is still so good.
It's so good.
The young animal one?
Hey,
Animal
hey, Amy Dallen.
Jam.
What?
Who's Dave McKean?
Oh, okay.
Ah,
Dave McKean, and this is one of those interesting things where,
Lean
like,
in, everyone lean in.
I was kind of a late convert to these covers, in part because I came to this when it was already in trade. He'd had his influence everywhere, and I was sort of like, I like pictures of things, but like the truth is that like abstract imagery put this book on the map in a way rivaled by almost no other sort of like Alex Ross covers. There are very few sort of collaborations where you're like, yes, this exact thing on the front was paired in idea and form with the creative work being done inside. So you absolutely...
I was going to say Seasons of Mist and Time of Your Life are like two of my favorite examples.
Dave McKean
Yeah.
is an incredible artist. I'm a grown-up now, and I can see it. With like my teen eyes were dumb. And he makes actual physical pieces and then photographs them. So if you've seen photographs of his work process, he's got a little like
Box.
with depth to it, and all of these physical pieces that are assembled inside it. And he, let's see.
There might be a Sandman cover also in the gallery if I've got like an issue cover in there.
And this was like a crazy big, even outside of this was like a very big trend in like late 90s, like early 90s, late 90s art world.
There we are. Here's
Like collage art and
yeah.
diorama art, and these physical things were like very, very big in the art, like in the traditional art scene at the time. Like you would go to gallery showings and it would be these little picture puzzle boxes like Dave McKean made. And so he was bringing like really like high art world to Sandman, which really helped with like,
And
when you were saying it's a
gone on to
graphic,
do so much.
people would say like, oh, graphic novel.
It's a graphic novel,
It's
not
a
a
graphic
comic book.
novel. I read Sandman, I don't read comics. This kind of helped that. This helped bring adults who were already kind of intrigued by Watchmen and The Dark Knight. They were like, oh, okay, comic books, but there are smart comic books. Like all of the early reviews for Sandman that are rave reviews, it's so funny how far we've come.
They're so
are like,
condescending.
This is like the HBO of comics.
Oh,
it's not
God,
like
I remember that.
regular comics. It's like cool after dark adult comics for
no-
thinking people.
But then they were the best review. They were all the people who were like, we really see that something is going on here, but
Yeah.
it was almost impossible for them to say that without then being like, it's not like regular comics. We promise. They're not like comics.
It's so funny to see how far like comics have started to like by the time we get to where we are now to see how far like comics have come.
We don't have to have this
acceptability.
conversation anymore.
yeah.
Yeah. Yes.
We have different versions of
There's
it, but like
there's
not
new
on the
versions.
scale that they had on these. And can we tell the World Fantasy Award?
I was hoping you would.
It's my favorite thing.
It is. It is the best. It is one of
I
my
know
favorite
this
stories.
thing?
I was gonna ask if you wanted to do
So
this.
you've read Dream Country,
Yes.
and you've probably read the particularly excellent standalone story, Midsummer Night's Dream.
Yes. 100%. It was lovely.
It was really
So-
good.
It's very, very good.
It won a World Fantasy Award for Best Short Story, after which, due to what most of us suspect was embarrassment, they immediately changed the rules so comics weren't eligible anymore.
Wait, what?
It was the first and only comic to win
A World Fantasy Award for short stories.
because they were like, we don't really feel like it's appropriate to have comic books for this contest, so they were like, they had to change the rules afterwards.
These
Change
days
them back.
These days they have other awards, like Hugo's give out a category for graphic fiction.
I love this
for
like
fiction.
30-year later outrage.
Beef.
You're just
Give
like,
it
wait a
back.
minute.
Wait a minute.
This aggression will not stand.
You're
Will
recycling
not
the
have
same
to.
Facebook article over and over again. Man.
Let's go
It's okay.
back in time.
Wait, man, no, it's happened. It's over.
Oh.
No, it's done.
That's over.
Yeah, but it's done
We can't
now.
change it?
No,
All right.
It's been like 3 decades.
All of those people have retired.
I will. This is my unpopular opinion. Midsummer Night's Dream, one of my least favorites.
Yeah?
Yeah, it's fine. It's good. It's fine.
I
fine.
like it.
I
Popular
loved
opinion,
it.
Sandman edition.
I loved
fine.
it, but it was not my favorite story in that.
It's
in
not
that
my
edition.
it's not my
No.
favorite either, but it is one that I quite like. My favorite is it will always be the Golden Boy. The Golden Boy is
Golden Boy.
the
Very
the Prez one that I didn't have time to read that you were trying to show me right
Yes.
before.
Oh, you're gonna
because I'm a jerk. So eventually, and this is not really very spoilery, they spend an entire like 6 or 8 issues in the Inn at the End of the World, which is a pub that everyone hangs out in when the universe ends. And everyone sits in this pub and drinks and tells stories while whatever nightmare crisis of Darkseid is going to be destroying them. Whenever the universe is in peril, everybody who can goes to this pub and waits out the storm. And people sit around and tell stories in this pub. And one of the stories is this monk who speaks of the first teenage president of the United States. Whose
Which
name
I thought
is
Neil Gaiman
Prez.
was making up.
But he didn't. Oh. Prez was a real comic book. Prez teen
Less than
president.
3 issues? 4 issues?
It was a very short run, but it was a real thing of the idea of hip teen president, like
It was
Archie.
because they moved the voting
Yeah.
age.
Yeah.
When was this in like the 60s or?
Yeah.
It was right
Yeah, 'cause
after
it
they
sounds
changed
like-
the voting age
To 18.
from 21 to 18, in part to reflect unhappiness of kids with the Vietnam War, where they were like, okay, well, we will acknowledge that it's weird that you can get drafted but you can't vote. So they changed the voting age to 18, and there were sort of widespread imaginings and/or cultural fears, especially given 60s teens being generally pretty rebellious, about like, does this mean there's going to be a takeover, like political power in the hands of the young people? And DC was
What
like,
will become of the world?
clearly they'll change the eligibility rules and they'll in fact elect a groovy teenager.
A groovy president.
And he is a groovy president.
He's very groovy.
He's so groovy.
Wait until you meet Prez.
Prez
just the grooviest.
Prez.
Let me tell you, Prez 2022 is all.
Oh,
I'm
he's
saying.
he's like
Did you read
liquid
the Mark
West
Russell
Wing.
miniseries?
Smells
last
like Teen
year?
President. Yes, I did. That was the one that came out.
No, the one you're talking about is
This now they're just trying to get us to believe anything.
I think
This
so.
is now they're.
You will know when I'm trying to trick you.
You will.
Wait.
And you will know Prez.
I don't think I've read the one you're talking about.
That's
I've
his
read,
illegitimate son who smelled like Teen President.
Okay, the one where a girl accidentally goes viral burning her hair at her menial menial
What?
fast food
Just
job.
yes and this suggestion.
She becomes like internet famous as Corn Dog Girl, and she becomes like a joke write-in candidate for president. And I haven't reread this book in about 2 years, and it's going to feel real different now. But she becomes a joke writing candidate for president, and then actually wins. And it's Mark Russell writing, and a wonderful artist whose name I'm forgetting right now. It was a 6-parter during one of DC's, the DCU, the
Sure.
the Weird Stuff initiative right before Rebirth. And it was like, it's got perfect near future nightmarishness.
I'm diving into
It's
this.
got
right
like
now.
hospitals where it's like to pay extra for an ad-free hospital experience, which again, funny 2 years ago.
Funny 2 years ago, not funny anymore.
Yeah. Anyway, so
Was it called Prez?
it was called Prez.
They made another Prez and I don't know about it? Oh my God, it's so pretty.
Only true Prez fans know. Only real Prez fans.
Okay,
This
I'm
is
gonna.
the all Prez
Oh, here we go. Here we go.
episode
Here we go. There. Yeah, I gotta show that off. Look at that.
Oh, she's great.
Oh,
she's
I'm into it.
wonderful.
Okay.
But so there is a monk in at the End of the World who tells the story of the original 1960s Prez. The kind of effortless way, especially after
Here.
the Vertigo imprint starts, and he's sort of told editorially. I don't know whether he was told editorially or whether he just made the decision to pull back a little bit more from the DCU. The way he kind of weaves these things in the background actually gets better. It's better than I think it is in the first. In the first volume, you're going to see a lot of DC characters. You're
It
going to
is-
see like
it is-
Dr.
it is a
Destiny.
cameo.
You're going to see we already like
Constantine.
Martian Manhunter.
Can't do a Vertigo book without Constantine.
No.
Sure.
So like all of it, like
Carney
you see a
Law.
lot of characters.
Dr. D, technically
Yep.
one of the big villains of the first book, is actually
Yeah.
a reoccurring DC.
This book was my introduction to Constantine because it was my first.
It was a
Mine
lot of
too.
people's.
Yeah.
Mine too.
He comes
Cain
through
and
real
Abel.
strong.
Cain and Abel, who were kind of, although they were not really main DCU adjacent.
They're still DC characters.
Superman has a brief moment in the book.
Yep. Batman's in there as well towards the end.
But like you said, they pull back on all
they
that
pull
stuff.
back
as they
on
go.
it, and it becomes much more kind of effortless and, like you're saying, in the background. Like when Batman and Superman show up, it's in a very sweet way, and it's very, very brief, and it's wonderful. But it's kind of like, and this is another reason why I'm like, maybe not Preludes and Nocturnes to start. Is like it's a very different book. Because
Really, now that you're saying it, it really is, and like I hadn't realized that because we decided to do this episode a couple months ago. So I've been trying to read for a couple months. I'd forgotten about that.
Well, I love the conceit of like a lot of sources of power within the DC universe come from the Endless and come from specifically Dream being imprisoned, right? So like Dr. Destiny's powers come from Dream. Like you go to Arkham Asylum and you see Dr. Destiny break out, and the source of his power is something that Dream has lost when he was kidnapped. And so there's a lot of like, you know, we already talked about Wesley Dodd. There's a lot of like, oh, Dream kind of inadvertently, and I can see this as the initial pitch for the book, and it's very clever. But I like it better
Dream
as what it
warped
became.
the world.
Dream kind of influenced everything in the DCU and made it the way it is.
Well, and he was also, and this is
And
worth
all
remembering,
accidentally too, like just because he was kidnapped by this occult thing.
I believe he was not the first of the Endless to appear in the DC universe either, because I believe Destiny was a slightly older. They had already established the notion of a cosmic idea of Destiny he's
He's the oldest brother, right?
the oldest brother. He is a hooded figure who is chained to a book that he is forced to read. There he is.
Oop, spoilers.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, that's my fault. Sorry,
No,
I
it's all
loaded
good.
the images. And there's Delirium, who, well, you have a wonderful piece of short. I don't know if we're there yet. But
Oh, well, and we can just mention.
we own a lot of Sandman stuff.
All of the Endless you will fall in love with, but one of the common choices for being in love with is the bizarre and childlike Delirium, who is a combination, as you can imagine from the name, of sort of, it's less the hedonistic version of Delirium and more just whimsy and madness tied together. So usually inventively depicted by a variety of artists, but mostly looking like Tori Amos circa 1989.
Very specific.
There's a lot of, and that's the other thing about going back. When you go back,
her text bubbles. His are always black with the white text.
Oh,
Yeah.
who
Those
is
are always
the letterer
tie-dyed.
on Sandman is a legend, and we should acknowledge that his work, Todd.
he was
something?
on Doom Patrol as well.
Yeah,
God.
Todd
makes-
Klein.
That makes total sense.
Every time Dream speaks, he has these black bubbles. Delirium speaks in those rainbow bubbles. Their voices are distinct in a way that it will stick with you for the rest of your life.
And this is something that I was just about to touch on. Is like one of the things that you have to kind of go in with this in the back of your head is, like anything that is so influential, a lot of this stuff is going to feel very common
Like
and
it's been
very
done.
like, oh, I've seen this 100 times.
You have.
The reason you've seen it 100 times is because Sandman started it. Like the idea of these characters having these different colored bubbles and different fonts for every character is something that like really, like Vertigo DC really kind of like pushed out there. And I you know, it came from sort of 2000 AD, and heavy metal were using it for a little while because it was more experimental stuff. But as far as like mainstream stuff, like this was the first time I had ever seen anything like that, where I could hear every character's voice in my head because they decided to make the text stylistically.
Yeah, there's an
sound.
element of like onomatopoeia almost to just the bubble itself.
There's a
So I found, like,
a
And
I
fairy
love
tale universe where they.
the curvature of desire. Oh God, the fairy tale universe.
And Death just has a normal talk bubble,
Yeah, she's normal.
I love
which
that.
I love.
She's so.
And
she's so
what's really
human
fun
and
about it
approachable.
is that like you can because with that method, you can look at a character, you can focus on a character's reaction who's not talking, and just like reacting to the conversation around them, but you can still tell exactly who's talking out of that frame. Because it's like, oh, well, here's a death bubble, here's a delirium bubble, here's
and it also helps later, and I don't know if you got to this, but there's an image in the bank called Cats, I believe, which means that you can have a main character whose shape changes depending on who's experiencing him, and you always know who Dream is, even when Dream
of 1,000 cats
is a cat.
That was my actual favorite story.
That's a lot of people's favorite.
That's the best issue of Sandman.
Yeah,
Best issue.
I don't know if I can pick a best picture. Best
all in
this is
Dream
the top
Country.
5 for
Definitely
sure.
up
As a
there.
matter of fact, I'm going to say if you want to dabble in Sandman, just grab Dream Country.
Yeah, because
It's volume 3 technically, but it's all these standalone stories, and it's where you start to get the sense of the
standalone
world.
stories.
And it's very it's just this beautiful anthology that gives you like a taste for everything that's going on, but you don't have to worry about continuity. You don't have to worry about whether you love this thing yet. You don't have to like get into all of the legends and lore. You just be like, okay, do I like these characters? Do I like this style of story?
And what was fun is that like in Season of Mists, they actually referenced
Which is
1,000 Cats. When Bast
It's as if
shows
they
up.
know.
A lot of it, dude, the way everything ties together.
Oh, it's
You have-
so. Mwah.
This is
I am
intricate
so
puzzle
jealous.
box.
This is
That I
one of
still
those.
get to read it?
This is one of those things where like every once in a while, there's one of those things where you're like, I wish I could give myself selective amnesia and just read this, watch
Oh,
this,
I kill
play
for
this
that.
again for the first time.
Yeah.
This is one of those.
Speaking
things.
of selective amnesia, they can't all be winners. We need a topic for our.
Oh,
first
that's
topic
right.
At some
We
point.
warned you about that, right?
That was not.
Oh, I saw this.
Not every
I saw
segue
this.
can
I
be a
saw the-
winner. This one.
That was a
isn't.
nice way of saying no, you did not, but I'm going to go with it.
No, but I saw the PR for the Empire.
Oh,
Yes.
yes.
Obviously,
I
that
said
one is
was
relevant
you,
to my interest.
yeah.
Yeah, smart.
We hope we gave you some bad ideas.
Entry points is a great thing. There's sort of different schools of thought. So Dream Country, that's a good case for.
I think if you're already a DC fan or a fan of EC Comics, there's no sense in not starting at the beginning and just letting it warp. Of like just sitting there and knowing that the experience you're having in the beginning is not going to be the experience you have 6 issues later. But to be fair, it's not going to be the experience you're having 10 issues after that.
Yeah.
The book does morph a lot.
It does, and I'm curious what your perspective on this. There's 2 answers I've given sort of at the shop, and there's one that like, if you are willing to sort of, if it feels like you might be willing to give it some time to become what it is, I love starting with number 1 because you get to watch it turn into what it is.
Yes.
But if you want a sampler, another place a lot of folks will go is the later anthology, Endless Nights,
Endless Nights.
which
I don't
tells.
know that I've read Endless Nights.
You
It'll
haven't.
follow. You can read it after you're done with the whole thing. It's just basically a story with each of the Endless, with different artists collaborating.
Cool. I wish
uh,
I'd read that one now.
Well, it'll be great, and you'll like it when you get to the end of this and you're mad that there isn't any more. You'll be like, oh, thank God,
thank God
there's more.
There are a
Yeah.
lot. There are a lot of extras, and if you feel like you're loving it and you can power through, just hold off on all that stuff until you're done.
Yeah.
It's way more rewarding.
The closest cultural equivalent I can give to this book also, and this is something worth noting for people, is Doctor Who. It's got the same whimsy of Doctor Who. It's also got the same horror content. So be
But I
prepared.
would say,
Oh,
like,
we
from
haven't talked content.
No.
warnings, but
I mean, there's a reason why like some like the Doctor's Wife is one of my favorite episodes of Doctor Who, where it's the one about the TARDIS, the personification, and that was Neil Gaiman.
Yeah, Neil Gaiman
Like,
wrote it.
and
Yep.
it was a perfect episode of Doctor Who. So yeah, I feel like
But
that's very apt.
I would say that, like in this particular example, like the horror is turned up a little bit more than the whimsy, whereas Doctor Who's a little more towards the whimsy than the horror.
It is, but I'll say the further along you go in Sandman, the horror turns down and the whimsy turns up.
Yeah. Like certainly, like Doctor Who has some horrifying moments to it, but
The beginning
There's no
of
diner scene in
Sandman,
Doctor Who.
the beginning of Sandman, the horror is up pretty high.
Yeah.
And it's slowly.
We've discussed this in the past, but like content warnings for this book. For I think everybody here, like it is worth it, but there's going to be violence. Like there's like a lot of awesome sexuality, but also some like
Dark.
There's a lot of darkness. There's a lot of investigation of the like people who hurt others, and then the greatest empathetic perspectives on that you'll ever get are in the words of death. But like to get to that empathetic perspective on people behaving awfully, you have a lot of people behaving awfully. And I'll say, like, my story of discovering Sandman is that I made friends with, like, I had moved across the country and I met 2 very cool girls who somehow found out I read comics, who were kind of gothy, and were like, here, you need to read this. And I started reading Sandman, and I loved it, but I was disturbed. And I put it down because I was like, I'm enjoying this, and I'm not comfortable with the fact that I'm enjoying stuff this messed up. And that was just me. That was who I was in high school. And I put it down.
There's some nightmare fuel in here.
And I picked it back up after college, and it is one of my favorite things of all time.
But you had to be at an age.
But I had to be ready for it.
Yeah, you had to be ready for it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think another warning that's probably very relevant now is with anything that's 30 years old. There's some terminology and discussions that were very respectful and sort of groundbreaking at the time that now like maybe you don't like. Maybe you don't like the words that they're using now have different associations, but at the time it was the most respectful way to speak about certain things. Like I will say, through Sandman was like one of my first instances of being socialized and normalized to the LGBT community. Because I at the time I didn't think I knew anybody that was like that, and so by the time I got done with Sandman and I actually had my first friend come out to me, it was not a shocking moment or a moment of friction, because I was like, oh, yes, I've seen this, and I've seen this represented in a very positive way. But that said, like I'm saying, the way they were talking about it is the way people were talking about it in 1989 and 1990, so just be ready for that.
And I'm glad that there's a character that you've probably just met.
Wanda. I was just about to bring her up.
It's one of the probably first trans characters I had encountered in anything,
It's very early, especially for what would be considered a mainstream comic. Like the only other one I could think of that even vaguely went in this direction was maybe Doom Patrol, but not really. But that was like super metaphorical trans character as opposed to
actual trans.
Yeah.
I should have looked up specific links, but you can find some good writing on from trans writers today reflecting on Wanda, who have there are readings of people who've taken strength from that depiction and readings of people who are pointing out the issues with that depiction, and they both make perfect sense.
Yes.
And it because there was this, there's a quality to the way they viewed it at the time that like Wanda's super cool and strong and punk rock, but there's also stuff that reads hurtfully today in light of different ways of understanding things. So you will have your own experience with it, and that's fine.
It's an evolution.
There's the whole Bizarro it's the best use of Bizarro I've ever seen.
Yeah.
It really is, so.
Yeah, it's definitely, you're gonna get your mileage, but especially if you realize, it was that for 30 years ago there was nothing like this, and I had the best take on this, or my favorite take that I've ever seen on this was from a friend of mine who was the world at that time was particularly dark in that direction, and that was very much reflected in this book. Is that this book is not kind to Wanda on any level, and the one thing that character did really well was literally tell the book itself on a certain level to go fuck itself. Like very much like literally the universe is like, no, you're weird, and you're like, fuck you too, and I'm like, all right, I'm into that.
Yeah.
You may not win, but you go down yelling. So that was poor Wanda.
The ultimate victory is she was right. I love this book.
It's a character worth just still 30 years later. It's a character worth discussing, and it's such an interesting. And that story is also really scary as all hell, which is a whole nother.
You're in the middle of that one right now, right?
I'm so close to the end. It was so frustrating.
So you got to the Bizarro.
I've got to drive. Oh, why do I have to drive? I could finish this if not for driving
He was
time.
very upset.
Little cars, come on!
And we haven't
I
even
have
talked-
20 pages left.
There's so much that's still on the table. There's a lot of jumping around to different historical times, which I particularly love. What is
The
his
man,
name?
Hobbs.
Hobbs.
Yeah.
I love him so much.
So
You've met him.
The time traveling.
He's not a time traveler.
He just doesn't die.
Yeah.
That was one of my favorite stories of all time.
So good.
Sandman got into it. He was at a pub.
It was like a bet with death
Like
or something.
12
Yeah, tell us
right?
the story as you remember.
Yeah,
you read
please.
it most recently.
As I remember it, Death and Dream were in a pub, and I can't remember which one was. It felt like it was the same sort of gambit that God and the devil made with Job, where God was like, no, he would never deny me, and the devil was like, let me try.
Yeah.
It felt like it was something similar to that, where Dream or Death was like, nah, humans are dumb. They're all gonna want to die eventually, and Dream was like, nah, try this guy. And the guy was mouthing off.
He was drunk, mouthing out. He was like, I ain't gonna die.
I ain't never
I'm
gonna
be
die.
fine.
And Death was like, all right, that dude won't die. And he's never died.
And Dream made the deal. He was like, all right, I'll meet you in this pub in 100 years. Was it 100 years?
It's
100
every
years.
100 years.
I'll meet you in this
or
pub.
was it 90 years or
Hundreds.
Every
100 years.
Every 100 years.
I'll see you in this
Same
pub in
place.
100 years. Like, fine. And then, like,
It's something only
100 years later.
like
What?
an American writer wouldn't say that because we would not assume any building was going to be in the same place in 100
100
years.
years.
But like,
But this pub has existed for
As they
1,000
do.
years now. Yeah.
And it's great that
have,
that
like,
one
one.
little story like sets up a lot of because it's a single issue.
Yeah.
But you meet Shakespeare for the first time.
Oh, yeah.
And Shakespeare and Dream
Lady
have like
Constantine?
a very Lady Constantine.
Lady.
Like all are connected to Dream in some way, and it's really interesting watching them all come back. Hobb especially.
And like he even goes to before he goes to this is another issue we'll get to I'm sure, but before he goes to hell to face Lucifer for a second time, he like goes to Hobbs and he visits him in a dream and he's like, hey, you're visiting me awfully early. It's not even 100 years yet. And he's like, well, I've got to go to a place. I don't know if I'm going to come back, and I just wanted to say goodbye. By the way, here's some dream wine. It's delicious. You can have it. And then he like wakes up and like his girlfriend or wife wakes him up. She's like, Hobbs, baby, you were dreaming. You were kind of talking in your sleep. He's like, it was just a silly, silly dream. And he looks up at his nightstand and there's wine.
The
there.
wine
It's like,
bottle.
A silly, silly.
Dream.
I was like, oh, so good. Like, but the Hobbs, that one issue was like what defined how much I love Sandman.
So
like that one, I was like, oh, this is fucking good. This is so good. 'Cause there's
don't-
so many ups and downs with Hobbs. Like you follow him, like he's been alive for 100 years and he's made a name for himself. Now an even bigger name. Oh my God, he's an aristocrat. He's lost it all and he's a bum.
Yeah.
And it's just
But-
like he just goes up and
it's
down
all-
and he gets married and has kids, but he just keeps going.
So there is one story, and I'm only gonna tease it for you because you have yet to read the best Hobbs story.
There's more Hobbs.
The best Hobbs story is what happens when Hobbs goes to the Ren Fair.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Hobb at the Ren
Hobb at the
Fair
Ren
is,
Fair.
like, very
Where is
good.
that story?
An actual 12th century man who's
Walking
been
around.
alive
What
for
is
like
this
hundreds of
bullshit?
years. Yeah. It's the giant chicken legs and the
It's just
candle
like,
and like
this is awful. This is just awful.
Oh, that. Oh.
he's confused by it. Sort of? Like,
He's like genuine. He's like, he's doing it because the girl he's dating is like, we're going to the Ren Fair. He's like, this is not the Ren. What the fuck is this?
yeah.
Oh, the Renaissance. Well, that'll be fun. This is awful.
This is not. It's like, there's no shit anywhere. It's like they should just spray you down with shit before they like everyone walking in. This is nothing like it.
sometimes.
Yeah,
Hobb is very good.
That one issue, like, I like kind of put it down and just kind of applauded. I was like, that's a good,
Oh.
that's a solid issue.
So you get a lot of recurring themes in it, which is sort of like most of this, it's about dreams, but most of this is just about humanity in one form or another. There's a lot about writers, there's a lot about what ideas come from, sort of people who make the
Calliope.
wrong bargains.
Oh,
the Calliope
Calliope.
story.
Like Calliope, as a writer or someone trying to be a writer and everything, that was like
that's a dark,
that's a
awful.
dark, tough book to read because it's all about like stealing inspiration. And then like at the end, there's an element like of
It's about it is about a
Getting too much of a
hack
good
on a
thing.
cosmic level.
yeah.
And,
Oh
like,
my God,
It is.
cosmic hack.
It is.
Yeah.
He is the word. He is like a supervillain hack writer.
Yeah.
It's just
And like it gives you the heebie-jeebies when he starts to kind of succeed. Like
it's
I don't
the
want to
worst.
spoil too much of
Yeah.
it, but
All I'm
There's
going
a
to
lot
say
about-
is a were-goldfish.
Yeah. There's a
Wrong.
lot about just like ideas and ideas as tangible things. Like the entire book is about dreams and ideas and stories and how they literally physically shape the world.
Yeah.
And that's like the one overarching theme of the entire thing and what that means and all the good and ill of what that means. Like the story of Calliope is obviously like the bad side of that. The one
Arabian Nights would be a good. Like, there's a lot of positive stories too of great,
Yeah.
great story. And then of course the pub story, which is literally
story.
everybody just telling stories in a pub is great.
at the pub at the end of the world.
At the end of the world. But there was there was also, this book had a bunch of branch out characters. There were characters who launched their own comic books and did very, very well for them. And I'm gonna start with this. Do you know what this is?
Well, I believe that this is the key to hell.
That is the key to hell.
Is a baby version of you dying right now? You're holding the key to hell.
Oh no, this is exciting because this is just like Christ harrowed hell, and he went and got the keys to hell, and he brought him back to God. That's That is the theory of Christus Victor that C.S. Lewis even believed in.
So I thought you might have really enjoyed. I was really excited for you to read.
So when
his
you guys
version of-
when you guys have been telling me like, oh, we can't wait for you to read Sandman, I'm like, I know, I can't wait either. I was like, it's a dude that gives a lot of dreams. Like that'll be super fun and exciting. And then like Preludes started. I'm like, oh, it's a little bit dark. All right, this is fun. I'm enjoying this. And then I got to this issue, the Season of Mist, where I was like,
Volume 4.
oh, this is why everyone's been. I went to seminary. Like I'm
putting that together.
yeah, theologian through and through.
So do we have a Lucifer in the graphics art? The devil is a character in this book, and he does.
And he's a character. I mean, he's a character in Vertigo, and obviously, like, if you are aware of the television series that came out,
Loosely based on
this.
But
the idea.
Why, sweet Morpheus, are you scared of me? Yes.
yes.
The idea of the of confronting Lucifer, like this idea is always like really sort of turned inside out by Neil Gaiman in different ways, where it's always like, and now I am storming into hell and I will confront Lucifer, and it's always just like hilarious and weird and not what you expect at all.
Yeah.
And it's wonderful.
And this is from the writer who would go on to do American Gods, who would write Good Omens with Terry Pratchett. He's got a lot to say about life.
Look
and
at
death
hell
and
right
life.
there. Look at that beautiful,
It's
beautiful
so
hell.
Amazing.
Well,
The
and
duel.
like,
I love the duel.
The duel is ridiculous.
oh, the duel is is so smart. It's so well done.
There is a duel in there that kind of contributes to this like overarching theme that we were talking about, where like ideas are the things that shape things, and
And
you win or lose. Yeah, you win
have
or
an
lose
idea
based
off.
on ideas, and it's really
Yeah,
wonderful.
A Duke of Hell has his
It's a real
helm.
Duke
It's his
too.
helm, right?
A real duel.
Yeah, he steals.
well-
There are three things that Morpheus is missing in the beginning in that first volume, and
After
has
he
to
gets
go
like
and-
kidnapped, essentially.
Yeah, and he has to go and get them all back. And I think the one that the demon stole is a helmet,
Is his helm, which he was wearing there in the last image that we saw, where he said, "Oh, my dear Morpheus, are you afraid of me?" And he said, "Yes, that was."
Karunzum, the two-mouthed, four-eyed demon, and they have a imagination off.
And it's like one idea has to trump the other idea, has to trump the other idea, right?
Yeah, it's the I'm a dire wolf prey stalking lethal power, and I'm a hunter horse-mounted wolf stabbing, and their ideas are literally fighting and keep shifting.
Yeah, and the only way to lose is to hesitate, or run out of ideas.
Yeah.
It's like the worst game of improv ever. Like I read that like from the standpoint of like.
This is basically a
yes-anding.
comic about a guy yes-anding with the devil. This is basically, it's like 12 volumes
Yes-anding Lucifer.
of the God of Dreams just taking a 101 class at UCB. It's, you're gonna love it.
Literally,
I
I
really
mean,
invest
like,
hundreds
like,
of dollars in
the,
it.
the best part is like you say that, and then you go to the image, and it literally is like the worst night at UCB. Like, not even kidding at all. It is.
He's an extremely cool guy.
Yeah, he's got a mic and a tux.
Cool guy.
And
so cool.
And Lucifer's got a.
But what was so amazing is that he comes back, and like that story, it feels like such a throwaway. Like I've got my helm, I'll never go back. Then he goes back to hell a couple times, and then that demon comes back a couple times. And he's like, Neil Gaiman, fuck you for being so good.
Yeah,
How did you do this?
Nothing gets wasted and nothing gets thrown away, which is something that I really love. Like, oh my gosh, that's the other thing.
Oh, I forgot Mr. Miracle's in this.
Scot-free.
Scot-free. I forgot. Like
Randy
we have a whole.
Goodness shows up in Volume 1 of Sandman. Like, they were really trying to tie this in.
Man.
But he's
That's some
having,
love.
Just the maximum amount of fun, I think, that he can think of.
I will say the 24 hours in the diner scarred me for life.
That's a really intense
Which one is that one?
sequence.
What
It's
do you
in
mean?
Preludes and Nocturnes when he goes to get his ruby from Dr. Destiny.
Right, that
The
one.
diner.
The diner.
No,
the
I'm
diner.
sorry. There's a lot of things in there. There's a lot of
No,
stories.
you're right.
Yeah, the
God, give me some
Beanie and
credit.
Cecil murder. I mean, like the whole thing is so
Rereading
much.
it, because it had been a couple years since I reread it, and when we decided to do this episode, I was like, okay, I gotta knuckle down and reread it. I only got as far as Game of You, but rereading this, I had forgotten every issue of Sandman somehow feels 3 times longer and 3 times shorter than any other comic book, because so much happens in a single issue. And it's all just wildly entertaining and extremely well-paced. Like, extremely. And you'll go through, and although that I was not a fan of.
Oh, which one?
I don't like it when they go all text. I don't like it.
I bought a comic book.
I'll buy a
darn
book
it.
if I'm going to buy a book. How dare you make that?
Same. I feel the same.
When they did Legends of the Dark Knight, they would do like twice or 3 times a year they would do an episode or they would do an issue that was like that, where it's like just straight up prose for 3 pages and then an illustration. I'm like, how dare you?
I'm aware I'm the only person on earth who like Grant Morrison's all-text Joker story that he just put out as this whole issue that was just 23 pages of text.
Oh yeah, I remember.
I'm the only one who liked that.
Yeah.
I know that.
I think I read that one.
Not a surprise to
great.
anyone.
It's not that I hate reading. It's just don't bait and switch me. You know what I mean? Like I'm a very voracious reader. Just don't bait and switch me.
There's
all.
an issue of Doctor Strange from the mid '80s where it's like a magazine expose that he's reading, where he's like, I can't remember who it was that wrote it, but some woman that he had kind of dated, like when he died in Secret Wars 2.
Oh my
she
gosh, I
wrote
remember that.
an
Yeah.
expose, and I was just like, so I'm reading it, and then I get
You're
it.
like
I'm
waiting
like,
for the comic to start.
wait, I don't want to read an Entertainment Weekly piece on Doctor Strange. Where's Doctor Strange?
There was a Wicked and Divine that was like that recently too, where it was like
I like it.
It was like a zine that was like interviews with all the gods, and I liked it as soon as I got in the mood to read it, but don't bait and switch me.
Yeah.
The first time I remember like being a kid and reading Watchmen, I read it all the way through the first time, skipping literally everything at the end. I thought it was like optional ancillary content.
My first time through Watchmen, I definitely skipped 1 or 2 of that. I was like, something about owls.
And I was like, nothing. I was like,
Oh, man.
what are all these details that aren't connecting? It's like, no, they're connecting. You can read 5 paragraphs. You can do it.
Watchmen is the one book where I was like, I feel like I need to read this, and I enjoyed it. I
didn't read any of the text
reread
the
a few
first
of
time
them.
through. I was that asshole.
Oh no, I that's the one book where I did do that.
I would if
But
I came.
it's what you're saying. It's the bait and switch thing. Once
Yeah.
you realize what Watchmen is, you're like, oh, I need those pieces.
Yeah,
They're
that's all
part of
very
it.
If I were to read Watchmen for the first time now, I wouldn't think about skipping it. But like as like a 10-year-old kid reading it, I'm just like, no.
Oh, I have to do this for school. This is not fun.
But yeah, it's fun to watch. Even though I'm not a fan of that issue, I am a fan of like all the different ways throughout the series that he will play with narrative, he will play with layout. There are times where you get to. We were talking about the
Corinthian.
Corinthian.
Thank you. I was waiting for the
Corinthian.
permanent host to like.
Motherfucking
Am
Corinthian.
I allowed to say fuck the Corinthian? Great.
Fuck the Corinthian.
The Corinthian
He is
is
pure
nightmare
nightmare.
fuel.
Pure nightmare fuel.
Ooh, there's something. Listen.
I think this is around
Shut
the
up
time
and
that-
listen. Everybody, shut
Yeah.
up and listen.
Okay.
Do you just shut your mouths
All three.
and you listen to me?
Yeah, all
Do
three
you
of
have
them.
a thing about stuff in your eyes? Do you have a thing about weird stuff in your mouth? Because the Corinthian is nothing but that. Nothing but that. There's only
He's
one
a
thing.
nightmare from the dreamland.
He's
There's
who
only one
escapes.
thing about the Corinthian that's different than human beings. And it's the worst thing. The worst thing.
And you didn't know it was the worst thing until you saw it.
I have nightmares about it now.
Yeah.
I
still
believe that
do.
was around the time High School Amy bailed out. Was like,
Corinthian?
Makes sense.
I'm into this storyline and I'm not ready to be enjoying this and I'm just not ready for all of it. I saw someone in chat being like, I read the whole thing in high school and I was fine. Now I'm wondering what that says about me. It says Amy was a baby.
It's saying you're right there with. I mean, like I'm a big fan of Nightmare Fuel.
Yeah.
I was always like, please make.
I would have been right there with you. I
was-
would have been like, oh no, this is not for me.
I was raised
like, I
on
know that
horror
this is
movies.
good. I know that it is
so-
working. I'm not ready. Like, I wasn't that I was like, oh, this sucks. I was just like,
No,
this is a great book and
I
it's
recognize the artistry and the talent. I also recognize that is not a tone that I can stomach right now.
And that I think at the time, like that's obviously the arc that hooked me after being not so into Preludes and Nocturnes.
What's the serial convention?
I stuck around. I stuck around for the second Sandman.
Oh, man.
And I got it, and it was great. But going back, this is another one of those things where if you know anything about Sandman or you read anything about Sandman, one of the things that they tell you is that a very seminal and early arc is about like a convention. And it's
I've been waiting. I was wondering when we were going to get to this.
so after Preludes and Nocturnes, the first coherent story that's in Sandman is ostensibly about a convention. There's a lot of other things going on. but-
It's basically a sci-fi comic book convention.
yeah, for a very particular kind of person with a very particular hobby, and it's
a particular set of skills.
yeah, they and it's something that at the time blew my mind, shocked me, was so weird to me, was so like insane to me, and now is the sort of thing that would be like a B plot on an ABC show. You know what I mean? And so you have to really kind of like recalibrate when you're reading this to be like, remember that nobody had seen this.
Can I throw my reaction in there and say that what you just described was my exact reaction, but at the same, like all at once of, oh my God, this is so cool, but I could see this being an ABC beep. Like I had the exact same reaction of, oh my God, that's what this is? This would make sense on network television though. Like,
I mean,
I had both at the same time. It's so weird.
There's stuff that's in there that's like, there's a part where we meet a member of the DC universe that is struggling with issues. She's thinking about killing. She's thinking about ending her life.
Man,
and,
that's a lot.
And it's one of those things where when I first read it,
there.
it didn't occur to me that you could do a story about a superhero that was also this. Whereas now, superheroes living in the regular day-to-day life of human beings is something that is very common. But at the time, it was like, I mean, the new Mr. Miracle practically revolves around it, right? And it's basically a throwaway fact about Mr. Miracle in this new series. But like at the time, it was like, wow, I can't believe that superheroes think this way. Or you would put a superhero into this sort of situation, you know? And not in a cartoony 1970s Tony Stark drinks and slaps people way. Like in a real, emotional way. You know what I mean?
If they had real hearts, what would happen to those hearts? Whereas Watchmen's like, if they had real powers, what would happen to the world? I mean, it's also about their hearts, but like,
But there is a bit of a like tonal kind of reversal there in terms of like what's central to the storytelling.
And it's like you were talking about, like all of these guys were playing off each other and building off each other at this time, and it was really informing everything that we think of in terms of stylistically what comic books are. So now it's like, Mr. Miracle struggles with suicidal impulses. Like, that's just part of Mr. Miracle. But at the time, this was just like, superheroes don't do that.
Superheroes don't have depressive states. This is not a thing that, but like it is.
At the most, they have to struggle to make ends meet with their aunt.
She's sick again. My aunt is sick again. I better sell some photos. But it's like, that's like 2 pages. That's like 2 pages.
Which at the time was this level of like, I can't believe they're doing this in a comic, and that's why the Marvel Age was what it was.
And it revolutionized comics at the time, but
20-odd years later, that generation grew up. They were ready for the next level of sort of re-examining things, and they turned out all of these books. And the thing that like, the reason I like, for all of the death and horror and all of this other stuff in Sandman, no other book paints as strong a portrait of hope as the one in which despair is literally a character.
Well, and here's the thing: is there's something to the fact that it is Neil Gaiman and not Grant Morrison and not Alan Moore.
That's
Even
so
though these
true.
guys were contemporaries and really were the creators of this particular school of comic book, there's something about Neil Gaiman's sense of empathy and real love for human emotion and human struggles that, even though a lot of this stuff is anachronistic now, still feels real enough and has enough real heart to be worth the read and to keep you reading and engaged, even though you know that some of this stuff is like, could be the B plot of an ABC show now. He just writes it so well, whereas Morrison is like very obsessed with continuity and recasting continuity and the details of myth as like plausible, and how do I connect all of these disparate myths. Neil Gaiman is like, all of these myths are real, and I'm not so worried about connecting them as just like making them feel as real now as they
like
felt to
humanizing
me when I was a
them.
kid. And I think that's why this age is better than, like, as much as I love Animal Man,
Although,
age
no,
is
I will-
way better than Animal Man.
I will have a fight about Animal Man because
Oh, I love Animal Man. I love it, and I reread it like all the time. I have the omnibus. It's one of my absolute favorites. But Sandman definitely ages better than Animal
Sandman
Man.
is all about is about dragging this down to sit with you on the couch, whereas a lot of what Morrison wrote is really about dragging you up into the into the
where can we go? Like, what can we do?
You're going all the way up into the 11th dimension.
Can I get this weird? Can I get this
Whereas
weird? Will
it's
you
like,
come with me?
This is like, we're going to bring the weird in one person at a time to have like a sandwich with you. You're going to you're going to sit with the sandwich. You're going to have a nice sandwich, and the weird is going to leave.
Yeah.
Whereas
And we're gonna make the
Morrison's
weird-
just like, take this, shut up. It's going to kick in 30 minutes.
It's going to be crazy. it's weird and we're all going for the ride. Whereas like Neil Gaiman is like, sit across from the weird and stare at the weird.
Stare at the weird.
And see yourself in the weird, and now you're on board with the weird.
Yeah.
You know?
It's a different flavor. They're
Whereas,
great
like,
flavors.
I was gonna say that there is a thing that Gaiman does with the Golden Age Sandman in this arc, the one that we're talking about with the convention, that is a very Morrison is still doing it 30 years later with like his Batman run, where he was like, how many fever dreams can I make Golden Age characters? Whereas like, you can see them like playing and growing off of each other's work.
Oh, absolutely.
And it's funny to see it 30 years ago in Sandman. And I think like, as much as I love that fucking crazy ass Batman arc, with Zur-En-Arrh and like all that.
Zur-En-Arrh fucked my shit up. Zur-En-Arrh changed everything.
Like all that stuff. Like that
But it starts
thing with
here.
Sandman is still just such a crazy moment that shakes me. Whereas like Zur-En-Arrh is just like Morrison playing with figures. You know what I mean?
No, like it's that picture of him from Wizard Magazine with all the Justice League action figures.
Exactly.
And going, ah!
But they both are very different versions on sort of like stories are very real to both of them.
Yes.
Grant Morrison is like, I'm changing the world with this comic book. Literally, you're doing a spell with me. And Neil Gaiman doesn't tell you he's doing a spell with you. He just did it.
Yeah.
Like,
Well, that's why some of the things, some of the Morrison stuff, some of the Animal Man stuff, like doesn't age as well, is because like Grant Morrison shows up as a character in Animal Man.
Spoilers.
And
Oh, yeah.
Animal, like, nah, it's fine.
talk about
it's
it like
fine.
every week.
I know, that's
And
fair.
and
People
like,
still
See,
come
I
back
still
from
love
it.
that.
and fucking Buddy looks at you
I
and
love
talks
that.
to you.
I
and
love that.
But it's in these ways that like they were so earth-shattering at the time, but have sort of become like, and this is no shade because once again I love Animal Man. It feels like I'm in a college creative writing class. Let's see if I can get away with this.
See, I'll
Some of this stuff becomes tropey, and it becomes tropey in a way, and that like doesn't age well.
Well, things become tropey
know?
because everyone tries to do it again.
Exactly.
They
It
just
only
did
works
Deadpool, as
once.
we discussed with Coy, and
Yes.
they literally went, "Are you doing the thing from Animal Man?" And
Yeah.
he's like, maybe.
Like, yeah, no, literally in the comic book, he's like, I might be doing the Animal Man thing. I don't know.
Yeah.
And I
Which
was
is
like,
not Morrison's fault.
no. If anything, I mean, like, and I'll say, like, this is somebody who Animal Man, like had an effect on me growing up. But yes, I know it definitely, like, some of those.
Dude, the
tropes.
Wile E. Coyote.
Oh,
Yeah.
man.
Animal Man.
Oh, no.
Whenever
It's
someone
like
says
one of my
Animal Man-
favorite.
when someone says Animal Man and Grant Morrison, that's I can't get past that one issue. I'm like, I know there are other issues, but that's the one that immediately comes to mind.
So I also wanted to touch on some of the other weird ephemera that have come out of this book because we
Okay.
got such an amazing characters out of this. We got the Lucifer comic book eventually because
Written by Mike Carey.
which we'll eventually get to because it's have you read it?
Read it yet?
I have, yeah.
It's
good.
It's like 30 issues of this is pretty interesting, and then he does the mic drop, and you're like, what? And it is a level of what is happening that has just not yet been conceived of.
It's one of those things where it's almost like, you know, when you watch a Joss Whedon show and you're just like, you wade through the first 2 seasons because you're like, if I can get through literally 46 episodes of this show, something batshit crazy is gonna happen, and then I'm gonna love this show.
All
And
the
you always
ones
wonder
with-
how they allow it to keep happening because it's just like, that's a lot of TV to make before you
that's a
get to the
lot.
moment. And you read Lucifer and you're just like, that's a lot of Lucifer to read, and it's really worth it. But how did he keep
How
like
did you keep going
Because
like?
Aaron Berger and Shelley Bond and the other
Are we-
people had a vision that was beyond this universe, and they were just like, "We know you've got it in you."
But you still have to pay to print the comic.
Yeah.
And like they did it. They did it for 2.5 years, and like
2.5 years of wait
and it's
for
like,
it,
and
wait
it's like
for it,
plunging.
wait for
Readership
it,
is plunging and plunging and plunging, and then it's like,
boom.
yo, did you see Lucifer? No, literally no one saw it because we're not reading it anymore. And then it's
better
like, go
catch
back and read
then
Lucifer.
go back.
Are there records of like whatever rec.arts.lucifer when this was coming out? Like, I
Yeah,
want
get on the news group.
Wow, I just felt myself age like 6 years. Did you just wreck arts us?
I mean,
Did
whatever
you
it
wreck
would have
arts
been,
us on
wherever
Twitch?
we are in the timeline.
I feel like that breaks Twitch standards. They're
I
saying
would love
wreck
to-
arts anything.
If anybody out there is an archivist with the microfiche on hand, definitely let us know what was going on.
You've got the cuneiform tablet.
Let us know what was going on in the Lucifer forum. I also want to know where I can download 3 Rama 1/2 JPEGs.
Somebody
and
right
I
now.
also want to know where I'm supposed to bring the egg to get to the rave on like August 23rd,
Yep.
1998.
Somebody right now, though, is going through a long box of old Wizard magazines.
Oh, man.
And they're just like, let me get to the review of Lucifer. I remember it. Like
It is. I mean, like, it is amazing that a Sandman spinoff can mic drop that hard.
Oh, can I just...
Yeah,
this
bring
one,
it.
Thor's Better Than Superman, an interesting and controversial username, says, the Endless have always existed in every D&D setting I make. I've just never told any of my players.
Oh,
you got a secret.
Oh.
That's amazing.
Oh.
I hope none of your players are watching this.
That's
because
amazing.
Awesome.
Keep that secret until you are ready.
Oh my
3.5 years later.
Can you imagine being the first player at the table that figures that out? Just being like, wait a minute.
Wait a minute.
Wait, just
Is this guy from the last? Wait a minute. Like,
That's amazing.
that's good.
well
Good
done.
for you.
Well done.
Stuff.
You're a good GM.
Can we talk about these?
Death.
Because we haven't really talked about
Death
her yet.
das High Cost Oof Living.
Uh-oh.
You don't
We
have
haven't expressly set spoiler ground rules here.
No.
It feels like sometimes we're going and sometimes we're holding back.
That's accurate.
That's exactly how this is.
And I want to like.
Usually the rule is if you just can't help yourself, we relax the spoiler policy.
It's been a decade plus.
Do we have a temperature on how many people in chat, how many people watching are familiar? I don't know.
My guess is 50-50.
Because here's what's up.
God, this ruined
literally
my theory. Like this was like my ruined dating for me for like 5 years.
Yeah, there is
God.
Death gets introduced. What is it? 8 episodes? Eight
Issue
issues
8
in.
of Sandman.
Sound of
8
Her
issues
Wings.
in. Sound of Her Wings.
Can't believe I can still do
It
that.
is the best introduction of any character in any comic ever. There is one page that is the page. And it's a spoiler, but it's also the one page where if I could show it to you, I feel like I could make you buy the Sandman omnibuses,
You're right.
the omnibuses,
I'm the beast.
the omnibuys right now. And it is...
I mean, if it's in Preludes, then it's not a spoiler.
So how? Well, I'm also going to say like this character. Also, I've got to say this character is so popular that they've made action figures of this character. They made statues. This is the T-shirt that I still owe Lisa.
Oh, that's a good one.
After all these
that's
years.
the other one. There were two.
Wear my T-shirt.
That is, I think,
Here's a
the one
little puff doll, the pin, like all of the fucking product, the statues that went on for days.
Obviously,
the Ankh,
Trip to Susie and the Banshees.
who's the mother of goth music. The very first band ever described as goth was Susie and the Banshees.
Really?
Oh yeah, that goth sound. Death also, one of my favorite things, and this is in the Image Archive, is they did a PSA about safe sex.
Which I didn't know existed till just before this.
Where
All right.
Death explains how to. One of the great things is Death is explaining how to use a condom, and to explain how a condom is used, and you'll find this under Death Constantine. She gets John Constantine.
The Hellblazer shows up.
Who has a banana in his pocket so that she can show how to apply a condom correctly.
Yup.
That should be the Death Constantine.
There we go. That is not the page
There we
I'm
go.
referring to, but it is a wonderful thing.
There is John,
embarrassing.
and I like that they're on a first name basis. Hi, John.
Of course they are.
Hey, John.
Danny, this is for you.
Aww.
I did not include the picture of John holding the banana awkwardly because that's great.
Okay,
So Sound of Her Wings.
Yes.
This is the big one.
The other reason to start with Volume 1 is just to get here.
Yeah, that's the one thing that you will miss if you skip to Volume 2. It's kind of like how there's like that one good episode in Mad Men Season 1. Everybody's like, just watch Season 1. You can skip Mad Men Season 1. And as a matter of fact, I recommend it. But so basically, Morpheus has escaped. He's out. He's wreaked his revenge. He's retrieved his things that he needed to retrieve. And his sister Death shows up, and he just tags along with her for a day because he's bored and he doesn't know what to do.
You've not yet met
You've
Death.
not met
You've only
Death.
met Dream. You don't really fully know that he has a family yet. Like, you're still figuring all of that stuff
All that
out.
stuff
What's
at the end.
the page?
There's not a page number, but it's right after the stand-up comp. But yeah, there it is. That's the page. So basically, we are going around, and we don't know anything about Morpheus at this point other than he is the god of dream. We don't know anything about the Endless other than they are some sort of like supernatural forces. And we don't know if we like Morpheus, and we don't know if we can trust Morpheus. And we meet Death, and we immediately like her.
A lot.
A lot. And so she is basically just doing her job. She goes around, collects people, they complain to her. It's like that old Twilight Zone episode about death. But it's really kind of endearing. And then there is one moment.
She's got a sense of humor.
She's got a sense of humor.
She's nice
She's
about
kind
it.
to
Like,
people.
Super nice to everybody.
At this point,
there's
we have
empathy,
not seen Morpheus have any empathy or sympathy
Yeah, kindness,
for
not
anybody.
his swimsuit.
No.
He's basically like, these are the rules. You broke the rules. That's on you. Bye. So we don't know how he feels. But Death shows up and she's super friendly. She's very empathetic. A stand-up comic is having her first good set she's ever had, and she dies when the mic electrocutes her. And she's like, I could have, like, a couple more years. I was really getting it. This was my first good night. And Death is like, I thought you were very funny. I'm very sorry. Like, I thought you were really good. And then they get to this one bit right here.
Oh man, are we going to show that? Oh.
This is the spoiler page.
Oh.
Where's the blue tape?
Oh, that's a lot. Okay.
Get me to the blue tape.
Oh.
All right, spoilers. Be careful.
This
If you
is
don't
it.
wanna see
This is the
just
big
mute
one.
it.
But this is, if you want to know if you're going to like Sandman, this is it. This is the moment. So the mother is over the crib with her daughter.
Oocha coocha
Just
coo.
coochie coochie coo. Like, do you have it open over there? Like,
Oh yeah.
ba ba ba. Like, here we go. And then all of a sudden, like, Death comes in, looks over the crib, picks up the baby, and the baby immediately speaks perfect English and says, "Is that it? That's all there is? That's all I get?" And she's like, "Yes, I am afraid so," and carries her away. And it's just the sweetest and nicest about it. And it is the craziest thing in the world. And you go like, oh, I get this now. I get what's happening. We love our dreams. We think dreams are the best. And this dreams hate us.
Dreams don't love
care
us.
about us.
Dreams
Yeah.
do not love us back.
We are afraid of death. We spend our entire life afraid of death, and death loves us
there-
so much
is it in
and
this?
wants us to be happy.
Is it in this or is it somewhere else? There is a point where someone who is leaving too soon says, "Is this it? Is this all I get?" And she says, "You get what everyone gets. You get a life."
That's the same one. That's the immortal. That's the man. There's a man who there's one of the immortals, because there's several people who live forever. And there's one guy who lives forever just by being very careful. And he's just hundreds of years old. He's an investment banker. He's just very, and he's just been around. And he eventually, literally a piano falls on him or something. And he's like, and he does I did pretty good though. That's what he says. He doesn't say, "Is this all I get?" He's like, I lived really long. I did really good. I mean, like, I did great. I'm like 600, 700 years old. And she said, you got what everybody got. You got a lifetime. And kind of like, because he didn't do shit. He was alive for 700 years. He didn't do a goddamn thing.
And the other thing, like, I don't know if this counts as spoiler, a lot of the best lines in all of Sandman come from Death and
Yes.
her vision of the universe. And her perspective on evil is one that, like, permanently shaped my thinking. Because I don't remember who was interrogating her about it, but at some point they ask, like, it must be weird to take all the you take, like, good people before their time, but you also take all the worst people, and, that it must be odd, like, you seem so up on people. And she says some version that I should have looked up of, like, no one's evil on the inside. Some of them are sad, and some of them are scared, and some of them think they're the only person in the world. But no one's really, like, she can see what they see. And it's funny, in a book filled with a lot of people doing really messed up shit
Really
to other
messed up
people,
shit.
to have that within it, it's like, yeah, no, and some people think they're the only people in the world.
My Old Testament professor in undergrad said something that has always resounded with me, and that was that people will always act in ways that make sense to them, and like that has just like that has defined my patience with people, and it's just like when I feel myself starting to get upset with someone, I'm like, I pull myself back and I go, how is this making sense to you? In what area is this making sense to you? And it feels like that's something that's very much in line with death. It's like, no, this is, be patient with people,
God, there's and like every line of dialogue out of this character. I just found the one where like in the Game of You, where it's the girl getting off the phone. She's like, "And so, are you coming?" And I suppose I don't have any choice. And no, I'm afraid you really don't.
Yeah.
It's just, oh God.
Well, and that one, I was trying to look for quotes earlier, and I was like, I almost started crying in the middle of the show because the characters you meet in this, Neil Gaiman, Chris Bachalo, and Mark Buckingham are the team on
Such
Death
a
the Time of
book.
Your Life. And they tell just a story about like a couple and some of their friends and the things that happen to them and the ways that they let each other down and what it means to love each other and like
Hazel, man.
this was one of the first things I think I read with them, and like I love every person in this book like in a deep and apparently permanent way.
Yeah.
I was just like flipping through being like, oh God, and then she says that, and then she says that, and then like,
It's a lot.
it's a lot.
It's a lot. It's a lot.
It's a lot.
And
It's
again,
a lot.
probably one of
a
the
lot.
first really, really sweet depictions of a lesbian couple that I had ever read. Like, I don't remember it
Yeah,
standing out in
absolutely.
my memory, but like I met those guys a long time ago.
Well, and they were side characters in I mean, those are characters that also come from other chunks of the Sandman
Yeah.
universe. So it's
Yeah, they were you
never-ending
said-
interconnected
I don't know
small
that, but
thing.
you said Hazel, and I was like,
yeah, that is-
yeah, I've never read that. And the second you said Hazel, I was like, oh,
Well,
she
really
is
fat, like-
in the fifth volume.
Well, like Ken and Barbie.
Yeah.
Like
Fucking-
Ken,
oh,
like Ken and
poor
Barbie.
Barbie.
Ken and Barbie.
Poor
like,
Barbie.
Crazy. You meet
Oh.
like this throwaway joke couple.
They're like
and they come back. And,
uber yuppies.
And it's like insane when they come back. It's an entire story arc that is beautiful.
Well, their whole introduction is basically a sight gag. Is that they are just wonder bread, and it's my name's Ken. This is Ken. I'm Barbie. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
And you're like,
Oh my God.
what?
Oh, did it just click for you?
It just clicked.
That
for
it's
me.
not
Oh, did
Barbie?
you just
Like,
realize?
I just realized that was Doll's House.
Ken and Barbie in
Barbie.
the doll's house.
Sandman.
Boom! Careful about the limited edition. Don't drop the mics. Those are expensive.
It's so good. It's so good.
Wow. Yeah. Ken and Barbie in the
And
doll's
that's what
house.
I'm saying is there is something about
Wow.
the empathy for these characters. You meet a character once that he literally wrote for a sight gag, and he's like, I wonder what's going on with that character. I wonder what that character's inner world is. Like Neil Gaiman writes the joke, and then is like, what is that character's inner world? There's something going
He's
on with
got
that character.
so much in common with Morpheus. He's clearly just like you. What's your
Oh, yeah.
entire
I want
story?
to peel this back and see what's inside.
You know what it feels like? Some of this feels like to me is it like, you know how you get The Simpsons in 89 or 90 or whenever it is, and it's all about Bart. And then it becomes about Bart and Homer, and then it becomes about the family, and then it becomes about the whole world of Springfield. It feels like what you got here was, it's about Bart. Nah, fuck it, it's Springfield. Bart's still there, but it's Springfield. We're gonna introduce all the elements of Springfield to you, and that you're gonna meet the Simpsons by way of meeting Springfield.
We forgot to mention that Morpheus's catchphrase is "I caramba."
Oh,
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
something,
Yeah.
and
It's
it's
big.
hilarious.
Every
And
When,
it's like,
when you
Every
eat
time.
his shorts,
And-
it's so good.
oh, and he'll like leave a tack in somebody's chair, and you're just like, Morpheus.
Morpheus, and he's always spray painting.
He's like, prank calling, and he's just like, hey, like, what's up, Lucifer? Is see more
What's it called?
butts there? Like, and it's just like,
Oh,
what?
Sandman.
This scamp.
I'm not even kidding. Yeah, Little Endless.
Lil
Lil
Endless.
Endless.
Little Endless is
And
actually
I
a real
forgot,
thing.
I have a wall of my house is my like my print set from Jill Thompson's Lil Endless storybook.
Yeah.
Oh my
I'm
God.
missing one, and I can't find the one. Like I have 11 of the 12 up on the wall, but like they're cute little beautiful painted versions of the Endless that have an adventure with a dog.
Best Sandman artist. Best
Oh,
Sandman artist.
I can't. I ain't
I
picking.
gotta-
You gotta.
I can't answer, I'm not
You gotta,
familiar.
and that doesn't mean that they are the best artist. It just means somehow, yes, for Sandman, this was
Chris
the best.
Bachalo's death for me.
Bachelor's Death was. I mean, like, does it count? Because that was
Yeah.
the one that was the book that had the most significant impact on me. Were the Death books. Maybe Arabian Nights was a very intense.
Craig Russell?
Yeah, it was a very.
You'll get to that in
intense,
Endless Nights.
Visual
Okay.
for me.
I would say any Charles Vess. Charles Vess is like canonical Morpheus to me. Like when I picture Morpheus in my head, it is some permutation of a
I
Charles Vess
quite
drawing.
enjoyed Yoshitaka Amano's take. on it
Yeah.
As well.
Which is
I had forgotten about that. Whoa.
Bringing it back.
Whoa.
Do you want to tell them what Sandman Dream Hunters is?
Well, okay, so Yoshitaka Amano is one of those. I mean, like,
Yes, who is that?
Yoshitaka Amano is a very odd creature. He is a man. He is a brilliant artist and writer, a fine arts artist, who as a teenager was sort of swept up by a television company to produce product for them as some sort of weird Willy Wonka Japanese, in the way that only Japan does, where like, hey kid, you want to come make cartoons for a living? And was the visual at least creator of Gatchaman, Science Ninja Team Gatchaman. Eventually went on to create several classic cartoons, was the character designer for Vampire Hunter D and did all the Vampire Hunter D novel covers. Was the major artistic inspiration and has done concept art for almost every Final Fantasy game made. Has collaborated with all sorts of interesting people to create his own version of 1001 Arabian Nights, a short film called Angel's Egg, which is truly stunning. And is one of the most talented and prolific artists Japan has produced for the 20th century. He's amazing. I highly recommend you look up his stuff. It's gorgeous. Not just his video game and comic book and animation work, but even his fine art painting is stunning. And briefly, there was a brief moment when he was making a lot of headway, and he had just opened a gallery in New York, where DC Comics, they commissioned him first for a Superman-Batman poster, which are gorgeous. But then they commissioned him for a Sandman poster, and then they commissioned him to do a short story. He did a short story for Sandman, which was called the I'm blanking on the name again. You just said it.
Oh, the Dream Hunters?
The Dream Hunters. So it was kind of they were like, we have this amazing artist who's into doing this project, and it's a little one-off story for like one of those. You still want more Sandman? We have more Sandman.
Yes.
I don't even know how to not spoil it. I'm trying to.
It's because so much of Sandman is about mythology. It dips into what a dream story from another continent might look like.
From a Japanese folklore standpoint.
And it uses a lot of Japanese folklore. There are two versions of it you can find. You can find essentially the prose story accompanied by illustrations, which is Neil Gaiman prose and Yoshitaka Amano illustrations. And you can also find an adaptation into comics that P. Craig Russell did several years later.
Craig Russell.
You're gonna love Endless Nights.
Okay.
Just putting that out there.
P. Craig, be still.
Yeah. So.
That's an amazing, and I'm a huge Amano fan. I actually used to own some beautiful. I miss them terribly. I had some, I have an original sketch that I keep secret and say. I was really into him before he totally blew up, and I had the catalog book from his first LA show, which was Think Like Amano, and I like literally handed it to him, and it was because he was like signing. He's like, oh, you're a fan. I'm like, yes. I'm like, he's like, what do you like that? I'm like, well, Vampire Hunter D is my big thing. He doesn't even break eye contact. He's like, oh, that's really cool. Anyway, thank you very much for showing him. And I finally get home and open it, and he like, without even looking at the page, sketched Vampire Hunter D. He didn't even look down. He didn't ever break eye contact. It's just
because
he's made a bargain and his hand is doing it by itself.
Yeah, and I'm like I can't. I almost
a Sandman style muse.
I almost bought an original that day. I was like, it would have been like practically my rent money, and I almost did. I still regret it to this. There was May in Paris. Oh, it's a beautiful painting. I still think about it.
So I feel like we should announce, well, not announce. It's already been announced, but
this is an exclusive announcement. Nobody has talked about this yet.
Oh,
no one has covered this yet.
For letting us break this exclusive. This is what they call a exclusive in the business.
We got a exclusive.
We got a big old exclusive for you.
Not a exclusive for real.
Super exclusive.
Back in March.
Exclusive is what we call it.
Exclusive.
Hey, you take that off the screen. We need a win. How dare you? Just give us a win. I don't know what's going on in y'all's lives, but I really needed that.
So, as we get to this, I will briefly attempt to map out an incomplete list of the Sandman stuff that exists so far. There was the monthly series, which ran for what is now usually collected as 10 paperbacks or 5 big, gorgeous slipcover hardcovers. That is Sandman beginning to end. There are the many spin-offs. There's Sandman Mystery Theater. There's Lucifer. There's the Death mini-series that they did a couple of times. There's the
Dream
Books
Hunters.
of Magic. Are those considered a spin-off? Or
They are not a.
That was a big old Vertigo. We're all in.
Yeah, it was a Vertigo hoo-ha.
They're like the Sandman universe splits off into different directions. There's Endless Nights, all those short stories. There's the Dream Hunters. There was a gap where there hadn't been much, and then there was a.
There's the Dream Warriors, Nightmare on Elm Street 3. That's technically part of the Sandman universe.
I mean, I assume
many people don't know that.
More Chiefs notes, definitely a fact. There was Sandman Overture. The 6-issue sort of prequel that they did just a couple years back before it went sort of dormant again, and then. What's coming up?
There's one that, and there's one more I'll add after this.
Okay.
So back in March, they announced this sort of like Vertigo's bringing back in honor of the 30th anniversary, like sort of an expanded universe sort of titles. They've got the Sandman universe,
A one-shot which will split off into...
the House of Whispers,
Woo!
Books of Magic,
Woo!
The Dreaming,
Woo!
and Lucifer.
Woo!
new series by creative teams that Neil Gaiman is sort of overseeing. He's picked out people and like put them together into teams with editor Molly Mann.
How do we feel?
I feel.
How do we feel?
I never judge before I read. I never judge before I read.
What does your heart tell you?
My heart tells me. If you had asked me 2 months ago, my heart would have been, meh. But I gotta admit, like I'm now 2 weeks into like it's only taken 2 weeks for me to be like, DC's back, baby, woo!
They're back, baby.
I'm only 2 weeks into being like, I've just read my Superman, I've just read my Justice League, and I'm like, oh, where have you been? I've missed you. I don't know. I feel like this is looking fun, and I gotta say, there's also at one point there's only, as far as I know, one instance that I can think of where another writer wrote Dream, which was Grant Morrison's Justice League run. Had a 2-part Dream. Dream joined the Justice League on an adventure to fight Starro.
Now, in some cases, I won't. They have in the years because Vertigo was technically like it was both part of DC and not part of DC. So there's been a weird quasi relationship. There was a point where Death showed up in Action Comics a couple years ago. And they quite recently, I haven't read it yet, but in Dark Knight's Metal, they've had another appearance from Dream.
This was they made the conceit work in this one. I know that they did this with permission. It was definitely like, can I do this? It was like, yeah, you can do this. I hope I'm right. I'm pretty sure I'm right about that. I recall that because I remember being like, whoa. Both issues take place while the whole Justice League is asleep. It's all a dream, so that also makes sense. There's a image called Green Lantern. It's Dream meeting Kyle Rayner, or maybe it's called Kyle Rayner or Green Lantern, and it blew my mind. Like, this is why I wanted Dream to meet the Justice League, is for things like this. If there's any way you can pull up the Green Lantern.
I'm sure
image.
Chief is diligently looking.
I'm sure Chief is. There we are. You will surpass. They're talking about Hal Jordan. You will surpass him. You already know what he could never learn. Hal Jordan was the best. Everybody knows that. Everybody keeps telling me that no matter what I do. I met him. The guy was a star. What could I possibly know that he didn't know? Fear. You will surpass him. And I'm just. That blew my fucking mind. I mean, like my little like 16-year-old mind, or I was just like.
Well, and it's like there's something about Death where like, or not Death, but Dream, where he speaks in absolutes. There's no equivocation. It's just like fear. You will surpass him. Yeah. Good day.
It's the one thing that Hal never knew that you did.
Yeah.
It's great. It's brilliant.
He has all the time in the world, and he has no time for your nonsense.
No.
Death has a little time for your nonsense because it brightens her day.
Yeah, Death enjoys your nonsense.
Death is into your nonsense.
Yeah.
Well, Death knows that your nonsense is what defines you.
Yeah.
Desire has no time for your nonsense.
So that's what I love is that the like on a brief survey in my head, the only truly cruel member of the Endless is Desire. And I kind of love that. Like even Despair, like kind of is your friend, thinks she's your friend. She's not your friend.
She's that friend who's dragging you the fuck down.
Yeah.
She's not helping.
But like it's not her fault. That's who she is.
Yeah, no, she is not making anything better.
And Despair is often pictured surrounded by mirrors, which I love.
Yeah.
Desire also very into mirrors, but like.
And the two of them hang out together a lot.
Yep.
And then
dysfunctional.
So dysfunctional. And then the brother they don't talk about, who's very interesting, and the sister that's kind of a mess. We love our mess, the mess of the sister.
Yeah.
I fell madly in love with that character.
Yes.
The many wonderful, and then like they cross over, they meet Mark Twain shows up, and everybody shows up in these.
We will to talk about how I feel about the new ones. Like, if you sort of were there, we won't know until the books get here. Obviously, there's a level of like, we're gonna capitalize on the fame of our big hit with a bunch of new stuff.
Sure.
For me, this feels legit. Like, first of all, there's no sort of urgency to it. You know what I mean? If they hadn't decided it was time and gotten him on board, they could easily have not done this. It doesn't feel like before Watchmen in that
Yeah,
way.
That's what I was going to compare it to. Yeah.
It doesn't feel like before Watchmen.
Well, Alan Moore was like, no, don't do it. We're going to do it. We own it.
And it would have been much better if Alan Moore had been like, well, if you're going to do it,
Let me be involved.
here's how you should do it. And
So
I feel
Neil
like
Gaiman was like, here's this novelist I think is rad. Have her do a comic that I think would be different from anything you've ever seen. And that's what I think House of Whispers is this.
I'm already on board the title.
It's a new, so the
on
House
board.
of Secrets and House of Mystery are big parts of DC mythology that expanded significantly in here. House of Whispers is new. So it's just a new Vertigo book.
Yeah, I saw House of Whispers and was like, what? I don't
I love
remember
House of
what
anything.
This would be. Yeah.
There's
House of Pies.
Yep.
House of Pies is great.
Real good.
there was an old carnival ride in an old amusement park in Los Angeles that was destroyed in the 20s called the House of Trouble, and there's no description of it. It was just some sort of dark ride called the House of Trouble. I'm like, what? There's a
That's
your
a
origin
name and a
I know.
promise.
That's the name of the promise. That's going to be the name of your autobiography.
House of Trouble. Oh, I've already written a script called House of Trouble that has nothing to do with that, but it's a whole thing. But we're supposed to do the topic soon. We're running out of time.
And I will say they have artists. They just announced the artist to go with this, and I don't know how to say their name, but Bilquis Evely.
Yeah.
Of those wonderful Wonder Woman fill-ins is the regular artist on one of these books.
Oh, that's cool.
Oh.
It looked like the Dreaming is Faith Erin Hicks. Is that somebody who looks like Faith Erin Hicks?
I think it might be someone
I've been
else.
Somebody else?
weirdly avoiding any of the press because I just kind of want to step into this.
I'm
without anything.
trying not to look, but I saw Books of Magic and I was just like, fine, fine, you got me.
Yeah.
Books of Magic is
Fine.
the reason why I
You
did
got
Harry
me.
Potter
So that's
for like
what you're like,
a
fine.
decade.
That's the same with me. I got into
Oh.
Harry Potter late because I was like, that's just a
That's just
Tim
Books of
ripoff.
Magic's
You're just
bullshit.
ripping off Tim. How dare you rip off Tim?
I was
Tim
so
is real.
indignant. I was so indignant.
It's nothing like it.
That's nothing.
It's nothing like it.
They look,
They look the same. They have books. They do
both
magic.
have owls.
Yeah,
It's not the same.
Skin
they're
deep.
different kids.
Completely.
If they ever met, it would be like,
we have a topic.
What is our
that's
topic?
My job.
That's your job.
While she looks, why don't you introduce?
hey everybody, and welcome to the Wednesday Club here on Geek and Sundry. Each week we take a topic from the audience and discuss it amongst ourselves for 5 minutes to see if we can answer your pressing question. Today's topic, Amy, if you would be so kind.
Today's topic from Alpha user, our friend Dread Singles.
Dread Singles.
Yes! Welcome back to health.
Historical
Or on the way.
figure do you choose to give eternal life to and see what they would do unfettered by mortality?
Oh no.
Oh.
Okay, a couple ground rules. Can't pick yourself. I know that's an obvious choice. Can't pick yourself.
It says so much about you that you assumed that was how we were going to go.
I'm planning on being alone at the end of this. I'm going to outlive all of you with my own.
Well,
I
you've
already
already
have it.
outlived
I'm there.
like a few other generations of friends,
Yeah, we're
being the immortal vampire
pretty
that you
sure
are.
you are.
I have buried your ancestors. Let's move right along.
So, Dread Singles, what historical figure do you choose to give eternal life to and see what they would do unfettered by mortality?
I feel like I have a cheap answer because there was a death that scarred me more than any other. So that's an easy one. I would raise them from the dead. Sadly, I don't know if that's part of the rules. Can I break?
Yeah, because they say
Historical figure, yeah.
historical
Any
figures,
historical.
so I assume.
Most of them have
This
passed
is going to
on.
be a weird one. Jim Henson, man.
Yeah,
that
that's
hurt.
a good
Oh,
one.
that's not a weird one. That's a great one.
But do you know
Muppets
why-
should never die.
Do you know why that's a tough one though? Because I don't feel like he wants it. I feel like he wouldn't want it. I feel like he wouldn't want it.
All right, that's fair. That's fair.
You know
I'll
what I
rock
mean?
that. I'll
Like
rock
I
that.
love it. I love where
No.
you're going with
Okay,
it.
okay.
But I don't think he wants
No,
it.
I like this new rule.
Because what if you bring them back and they're just like bah about it?
All right, that's
Then
fair.
what do you get out of them?
So no, we got.
But him slowly coming to terms with his immortality
That's
would
true.
be so amazing.
Just like Hob.
It's not easy being immortal. I know you got to think about it.
I know.
I suppose if I had to have someone who probably wanted, Buckminster Fuller might want it. That'd be a fun.
yeah.
one.
Do you remember, did you ever read about in 1903, right around there, there was an emperor of San Francisco?
Emperor Norton, first
Emperor
emperor
Norton.
and protector of Mexico.
Yep. Bring back Emperor Norton.
Dude, I'm there.
Bring back Emperor Norton.
I changed mine.
And
Emperor
Buster
Norton.
and whatever the name of the other dog was. Mm-hmm. Emperor Norton and both dogs to go in and fix San Francisco and then the world with his true values and his care for his fellow men and his honest blood right to the throne.
Yeah, that's fair.
That's the thing.
I'm
He's gonna come.
need an explanation.
Stop the riot.
going.
Stop the riot through prayer once. That's true.
You said something and it made me think, and this.
I love that you love Emperor Norton. We're now best friends.
This might be a very strange answer, like what you said, and I don't think she's dead yet.
Yet.
And that's not a threat.
Coco the gorilla, the sign language gorilla.
Oh no, Coco's still alive, I think.
I think so. I want to see. I first met her on Reading Rainbow. Well, I don't know that Coco knows to want it or not, but that's why I want Coco to live forever. Because I want to see if Coco will become like Gorilla Grodd, or like will like evolve and go on to become like Caesar from Planet of the
We have a
Apes.
lot to learn from Coco still.
I feel like we have a lot to learn from Coco.
That's
like,
very good.
Coco has an infinite amount of time to finally write that novel that she's just starting to gestate.
See, all mine would be writers. All
See,
mine
like that's where I was like, well, I mean, there's Shakespeare, but I feel like that's obvious, and I was like, Einstein, that's obvious. Like,
I'd love to bring Vonnegut back.
Yeah.
That would be
Vonnegut,
great.
but no immortality. Poor guy, he would hate it, but it
He would
was
hate
worth it for the rest
But he
of us.
hated it the whole time.
Yeah, he
and
hated
that,
every
so it
moment of
doesn't
it.
count. Jim Henson was happy and content. You bring back Vonnegut because he was a son of a bitch the whole time, and then he's just a son of a bitch forever because he's used to it.
But at one point, does he give up on trying to make the rest of us see the world?
He can't.
No,
He
why?
can't,
How
right?
could he?
He
It's a
wants to
compulsion.
give up.
It's a
He wants to
compulsion.
give up, but he can't stop clarifying the universe for us.
No, he's like the angry music teacher in The Simpsons. We're gonna keep coming back to it. It's just, I hate my life. It's never ending.
Douglas Adams would be fun to have.
Oh, I miss
Yes.
Dougie. Bring
Yeah.
Dougie back.
He'd be into it too.
He'd be totally.
He'd be
find a way.
way
down.
into
He's
it.
probably living forever now somehow.
I hope he's unfettered by mortality.
That would be great.
But do you have an answer?
I know you've been.
We wish you all to be unfettered by mortality.
Yeah, that one hurt too. I forgot about that.
Adams and Vonnegut are really good choices. I would love, if I could do this sort of Sandman style, I would find like a peasant girl from the year 1207 or something like that, and somehow be like, this is the one who, had she learned to read, would have whatever. And
That's
that's
just the plot of Valerian and Laureline.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Literally introduced us to this book like
Good
a month ago, and I hadn't read it yet. And I'm apparently stealing it already because it's in my brain now.
You can always get like the jump start and grab Mary Shelley while she's while
Mary
she's
Shelley.
rolling. My God.
Mary Shelley, not.
She can be goth on an infinite scale.
There's nothing more goth than living forever, or dying forever. I suppose is really the.
Or wanting to die forever and not being able to.
Oh, it's
so
so
goth.
depressing.
That's so
That's
goth.
my ab tattoo. Die forever.
On the back, just as Susie and the Banshee.
Do they run out of room and they're like, die for a
Well, it was originally going to be a
For
knuckle
a-
thing, and then they explained to me how knuckle things work.
And we're out of time. With Knuckles, that is the moment where we suddenly run out of time. You have been watching our 5-minute topic here on the Wednesday Club. You can catch us on Geek and Sundry's Twitch channel, 7 to 9 p.m. Pacific time every week.
Wednesday.
Or on
every
Project
Wednesday,
Alpha.
or on Project Alpha.
And this week we are
anytime you
joined by
want.
a very special guest.
Hi, I'm Anthony Carboni.
Yay!
I didn't know if I was doing
You
my
have
own
to do.
thing.
I'm Taliesin
Doing my
Jaffe.
own-
Matt Key.
Amy Dallen. Thank
And,
you for watching our 5-minute topic.
Thank you for taking a look.
We've only got a couple minutes left, so thank you for joining us.
Oh, thank you for having me. This was fun. This is fun. I don't get to talk about comics enough.
Yay!
We feel like we
We do it once a week, and we barely get to talk about it enough.
Yeah, we do it once a week, and I barely have time to actually read what we're supposed to be talking about.
This was the
5
first week
volumes
I've
of
caught up
Sandman
on
is a lot
things.
of Sandman.
5 volumes is a lot. You did.
lot.
You made a real dent in it.
I was dedicated to getting as much of a dent as I could for
You
this
have to
episode.
spend the rest of your life with no more of this run to read, so savor it.
Okay.
Like,
Also-
it is okay if this takes
Okay.
some time.
Good.
Oh, yeah.
Good. Thank
I mean, when y'all reached out and I was like,
Eat
well,
the hell out of it.
what Sandman volume are we doing? And it was like, no, we're just doing Sandman. I was like,
Cool.
this is gonna be more than one. This is for sure gonna
Oh,
be
yeah,
more than
we can
one.
do
we,
forever.
we knew going into it this would probably be 2 or 3 episodes.
We do want to say a huge thank you to Comixology, our sponsor
Huge
for today.
thank you.
Please check out the Comixology originals. They are available right now.
Super
for your reading
Freaks.
pleasure.
Super
Freaks,
yeah.
a 6-issue miniseries you should check out as soon as you can. And I'll also point out that you can get the Sandman on Comixology. If you have a Comixology Unlimited account, I think it's about $10 a volume right now, because I
so,
may have
yeah.
just dropped some cash on something.
That's a
this
good
week.
entertainment value.
So,
Legit, we cannot overstate it. Comixology Unlimited is an incredible service, and it's very worth your dollar.
I'm so excited that most of our long-term viewers know that we just gush about this no matter what anyway.
Yeah, we gush
used
about
to
it
it.
without
All
sponsors. Next week, we have Dan Casey from The Nerdist
Yay!
Man.
joining us, and we are going to talk amalgam comics.
Crossovers.
Yeah, it's going to be crossovers, but it's also going to be amalgam
I miss you, Spider Boy. I miss you every day.
Oh!
Super Patriot, Dark Claw.
A bunch of stuff I didn't understand at the time because I was more Marvel than DC, and I was like, dial what for what?
Yeah.
It was real good.
So yeah, we're gonna be. That's a deep dive next week. Next week is a what are they talking about?
It's going to be a weird one. It's going to be hard to catch up, and
But
we know.
tweet us about Sandman.
Please.
Yeah, and
tweet
thank you
us
for
about
joining us.
Yeah, tweet me about Sandman every day of your life for the rest of your life if you want to. That's totally fine. Not just about like this show, but just Sandman in general. Thank you.
Not even the comic book, just the concept.
Just tweet Sandman.
Yeah.
Thank you in advance.
Tweet me the lyrics to Enter Sandman.
Take my hand.
Thank you
Off
so
to
much.
Never
Stay
Neverland.
tuned for Weave. We have the finale of Markia's Amazing Story.
Whoa, Markia.
She's so good.
She's so
Very
good.
I love her.
And we'll see you next time.
We'll
see you next week.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.